Could I see who's on that as well?
You can, I would recommend muting it because there's a delay and you get feedback and it's challenging to hear.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
and I don't know how the muting would work.
Okay, I'll play with it.
Okay, I think everyone's here. Are you ready to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have Robert?
Zachary Pyle.
Join the meeting.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:01. We do have a request for an excused absence. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to excuse Annie McHale from tonight's meeting.
Motion to excuse Annie McHale from tonight's meeting.
Second.
All right, first and a second, any discussion? All right, I want to do roll call on these so that there's no confusion. So if you could say aye, Matthew, or yay or nay, Matthew? No, Matthew?
No, he's right there.
He's muted.
He didn't say he's muted. Matthew, is your audio not on?
Looks like he's trying to work on it.
Okay, Paul,
Aye.
Robert?
Here.
Is it an aye or a yay?
Aye, yay.
Aye. And Matthew?
He's a thumbs up. He's a yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, so as a reminder, first off, this meeting is being recorded. So any comments will be held for posterity. Please mute when you're not talking. If you are on the phone, it's *6. If you would like to unmute, if you would like to raise your hand to speak, that's a *9. That's like raising your hand. And if you're in as a guest, not part of council or staff, we would ask that you turn off your video so that this will allow speakers to filter to the front pages. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There was one item added to the consent agenda, which is the ratify local agency agreement for the A&E professional services. And that is just adding WashDOT language, no change to the contract value or scope of work. And then there were, I believe the vouchers were added, but no other items were added after Tuesday.
Very good. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Unless there's some questions or concerns, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve items A through G.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Is there any discussion?
The only discussion is I got to turn Paul's volume down.
Okay.
Quit screaming at the screen, Paul.
So as I call your name, if you could say yay or nay, Matthew.
He's a thumbs up.
All right, Paul.
He's got it on mute.
Yay.
Robert.
Yay.
And Amy.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to public comment. There are quite a few public comments submitted for your review through the email process. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to read all of those. Does anybody need some time now to peruse those further?
Yes, I do. I didn't realize they were emailed to me.
Okay. Take a
No,
moment.
they were included in the 2 o'clock version of the council packet. There's about 18 comments.
Wow, at the bottom of the packet?
Actually, right
No,
at the
there,
top.
if you, at the top, if you click the link to the public comment section on A.
Liana, is there a version of the agenda that has the page numbers for the packet? I've looked in a couple places and none of the agendas that I have access to have have page numbers?
No, I have not. I didn't add those.
Okay. Because that, the Rock Cove part of the packet is quite lengthy.
Mhm.
All right.
Public,
Alright.
public comments start on page 80.
80.
I got it. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
The hyperlink works well. I just didn't see it.
Okay. Let's see here.
So are you taking public comment?
I would be happy to.
Okay, thank you. This is Mary Rapar, and I sent in 2 comments. One for the... and I'm
Join
sure
the meeting.
Hello?
Hello.
You're fine.
Oh, sorry. I was told I was shut out of the meeting.
Oh, no, somebody
Someone
joined.
joined.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Too much overlap here. I sent in 2 comments. The one about the Scotch broom and Chinadir, and it's spread along Highway 14. And Ben, I believe, had those comments. And the other comments were on the discussion tonight about the moratorium on housing in downtown. I won't bore you with what I said. You can read it for yourself. The other comment I had is about the fire hall. I would really, really like to propone for a downtown fire hall. I think our downtown would look really nice with a fire hall that had some additional room in it for public meetings. And we don't have to build this sucker overnight. We can just start with the fire hall and then build on the meeting rooms as we get money in the future. But it would be nice to put something like that in our downtown instead of along Rock Creek, where it will be hidden from public view, and there won't be easy access to Highway 14 and First Street. So again, I urge you all to reconsider the fire hall. I know we spent money on the acreage already, but you know, there's always room for discussions for something that's perhaps better for the downtown and use of our land downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. So we have been talking about that particular piece of property. There's one of the thoughts is that is the direction that our city's going to grow, is that direction. The other part about property downtown is the availability for parking. So if there's a need for a response, and then also during fire meetings, parking has become quite the challenge. So that's going to continue to be a challenge if there was, if we were going to look at other properties. There's just not a lot of properties in downtown that we could get the parking that we need. So like the comment.
There's lots of parking on First Street.
The idea is to get it a little closer, like in a parking lot because again, the big thing is that if we do have a response, that our responders will be able to park close to the facility. So yeah, that is one of the things that we are considering, but we're also taking some outside the box look at the property that we do have. So we're still looking at it, and I appreciate your comment, because a fire hall can be a crown jewel, and that is one of the things that we keep in mind as we look at the design standards of the fire hall. So appreciate your comments.
Brian
Thank you.
McNamara here. Can I interject a public comment?
Go ahead.
So if the council is not going to read those emails that were posted in out for the public that doesn't have the agenda in front of them, I would just note that 18 of those comments were concerning the continuation or extension of the moratorium, and that all 18 were in fact against it, and that at least 9 or 10 property owners voiced that opinion. And I know how you guys will, when that point comes up. I just wanted to have that in the record verbally. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
And just if I could clarify, may I speak?
Please.
This is Amy. Just to clarify, Brian, that was me saying that I hadn't seen the letters before. but I see them now and I'm actually down to reading yours. So all of the letters will have been read by all of the council members present before any action is taken. Just so you know, those letters aren't just going to sit there. They are being reviewed.
Thank you, Amy. I was just, for the non-person face-to-face public portion of this, I just wanted to say that, but I appreciate that.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so let me find. The page for number 5, Liana.
You're on mute, Liana.
113, is that what you're talking about moving on, or?
This would be 5A.
Yeah, that's on page 113. There is one comment related to Moss having
Yeah,
a
let's take-
microloan program as well.
Let's drill down on that before we get too far along. So first off, there was a request for some information on what we're doing for moving forward once we all start meeting at City Hall, so that it is possible for others to join virtually. So I did create an update document for you guys to take a look at. And these were the items that we talked about last month. And there was quite a bit of enthusiasm to spend some, the right kind of money for this technology. So the part that the kind of like the linchpin to the whole project is that cylindrical camera. And hopefully you guys have had a chance to look at the webpage and specifically the video. I think that you'll find that this is going to be, now of course that the proof is in the pudding, as they say, but just looking at what the video and the opportunity that it's going to give us for meetings, especially being able to have it in the middle of the room instead of something that's stationary like you might have on your monitor for these kinds of meetings. I think that you'll find that we are going to be very well equipped to handle some virtual meetings in the future. And all the parts are in. The TV is going to be mounted here in the next couple of days, and then start working on getting the computer set up and then the camera. So we talked briefly today, Liana and I, about meeting at City Hall next month. And if things progress as they are, I can see that happening. So just like month before last, we'll find a way to find the appropriate way to socially distance ourselves, and we'll be able to, and anybody wants to phone in, we'll have that option with the new camera.
And Scott, that update's on pages 6 and 7 for the technology
Yep,
update. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And then we had the A&E, that was part of the consent agenda. And what page was the Moss?
Page 112.
And I've dialed in, so
Very
I can
good.
speak to this as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about this, Matthew. I think this is a pretty exciting thing, and if not just the press release part of it, but the process that you guys went through, I'm excited to hear about this.
Yeah, so this was definitely not necessarily the original intention of Moss when we started it, but given the situations we've been finding ourselves in, we wanted to adapt and do our part for the community. And so we were granted some waivers by the state of Washington to do these loans, and we'll continue it beyond COVID-19. The intention is to prevent, future catastrophe due to a sudden emergency event. And kind of the example I've been using is the muffler, right? I'm trying to get to my job to pay the bills, but my muffler goes. Let's, provide that assistance so you can keep, doing what you need to do and avoid that downhill spiral. So we're providing loans for interest-free for 3 months, and then a low 3% thereafter. We can go up to about 9 months. So it's really just to help some of those emergencies that show up during life. So it's doing our part.
And then how does one apply?
So there's email and phone numbers. You can reach out to our treasurer, and they're included on the document in the packet. And we'll work through. So we already have an application process, but the first step would be to reach out to Pat Rice and or myself, and we'll do the intake over the phone or socially distanced, and go from there. It's a pretty fast process.
Okay, and then will you have some materials to place at City Hall?
We will, yes. Are you thinking just a one flyer tape up, or you want some takeaways? What would
I guess that part's up to you guys, but however we can help put out the information for this great program.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll communicate offline and get that worked out. Thank you.
Very good. And thank you. All right, so the unfinished business, Liana. So this is where we're going to talk about this presentation you put together, the slides.
Yes.
Okay, do you want to
Yeah.
walk us
So
through that? So this is on page 113.
Just a brief update as to where we're at. Skamania County is in phase 2, which allows dine-in restaurants and taverns at 50% capacity, and that's 50% of the fire rated capacity, and tables no larger than 5. And these are just the general guidelines as well for the requirements. In-store retail is allowed, personal services, so you can get your hair cut. New construction is allowed, and outdoor recreation. There are links to the governor's site has a bunch of information on the further details around each of these aspects of phase 2. We're in phase 2 for 3 weeks with no additional positive cases. We can then apply for phase 3. So potentially that's June 1st at the earliest when we'd be able to apply. Again, similar process with it being approved by the Department of Health. And then again, we can, if we continue to have no new cases, phase 4, 3 weeks after we were approved for phase 3. And again, there's more detail, and the frustrating thing right now is that the guidelines are being created sort of on the fly. And so they're changing as they go. And in some cases, for example, initially the restaurants were required to keep records of all of their patrons and all their customers and keep them for 30 days. That requirement has been lifted. And so now it's just a request for contact tracing. Some of the operational changes include the emergency ops set up the incident command center. And so operations are continuing. Again, it's a very slow moving emergency, so not your typical ICS structure. But we have a stock of personal protection equipment prepared. Isolation options are secured for medical officials and also for those that don't have the ability to either self-isolate at home or do not have a home to self-isolate in. And then as part of that structure, I'm working with local governments and other agencies to communicate both up and down. So for PPE needs, as well as updates on their status, open status, and again, just keeping that communication up and down as this evolves. City Hall, we've been open the entire time, but the offices have been closed to the public. We're continuing to be closed to the public. That may change, and I'll get to that a little bit later as far as potential uses of the CARES Act funding. Some employees are teleworking as needed if they need to self-isolate or for other reasons. And then we've moved up the 2018-2019 audit because some agencies weren't able to do their audit because they are remote working. Again, because we're still here, we're able to get access all of the records. And so unfortunately, we moved up the audit to May 4th. The auditors pushed it back to the 18th. And so this week we've just been slammed with a bunch of things. So the audit has been going on in conjunction with a lot of other projects. The city started a Facebook page as well to communicate out to the public. Public Works has been busy. We continued the Russell project, and then the water meter project began on Monday. So that's swapping out all the water meters throughout the city system. They instituted safety measures, so one person per vehicle. If they do have to work in close contact, they're wearing PPE, masks, gloves, et cetera. And again, that distancing protocols are in place for all meetings that are held. Council, we set up the remote meetings, the Zoom connection, established a YouTube channel, modified the public comment section so that people can still have their comments received by the city. And then we provided a 6-month relief on utility connections. So for the CARES Act funding, later on in the council agenda, you'll see that there's the authorization to approve the mayor to sign the contract with Commerce. What it will do is we are planning on having it provide $5,000 of support for PPE for local businesses, and that's being accessed through the chamber. They're collecting all of the supplies, and then there's a form that they have for businesses to fill out as they hand out those supplies. What else is also authorized is unbudgeted staff time related to the response, as well as PPE purchases. So the fire department has purchased some things, the city's purchased some things as well. And then facilitating compliance with the remote working or also distancing or I mean, we can't hold a public meeting. And so all costs related to the remote meeting setup would also be an allowable cost. So for public safety measures, as far as reopening City Hall, one thing I was looking at doing is adding plexiglass screening and a door, again, to kind of create that barrier so then people can start coming inside City Hall, which we would then clean on a regular basis. We tend to not get great throngs of people congregating, but it would allow a little bit better interaction with the public to at least have them be able to come inside the building. In the interim, some of the things that we've done, we have an intercom system that has been working on and off, again, so we're not shouting through the door, through the mail slot. We purchased a bulletin board with glass that we can hang outside because all of our notices have been posted inside, but with people not being able to come inside, they aren't able to see them. So we'll be posting that outside. So again, all of those notices people will still be able to have access to, and there's just not enough room on our glass window for them. And I think that's about it as far as infrastructure that the city would look to need to do with the CARES Act funding. Again, what we're looking to do is not just with this emergency, it's mostly a health emergency. And so there's not a lot of city activity, but we're trying to do what we can with the funds that we have. So with the $5,000 of support for local businesses, that's just an initial support. And it also will go for signs too, and whatever they need for any City of Stevenson business. If they need more, again, we'll look at the funds and see what we can do. I'm sure that there's flexibility with that. So some financial actions related to the COVID response. There are some projected revenue impacts. I still don't have the revenue numbers for the sales tax impact for March, which is when I believe like mid-March is when Skamania Lodge shut down and the governor's orders, stay-at-home orders were really put into effect. And so I don't even know what the sales tax numbers were in March, let alone April and May. But my initial estimate is about $73,000 lost for both the general fund and the street fund. And this is a projection that's very conservative. And same with the tourism fund. Revenue loss is about $137,000. For the tourism fund, there are some activities that have been canceled. Blues and Brews have been canceled. And from what I hear, Angie is looking into whether or not to hold the 4th of July event. They already have the supplies. She's looking to see if they can do something with people in their cars. Again, we'll see where we're at the beginning of July. But so some of the costs aren't there, and the way that we have that fund set up, the revenue for last year, in essence, funds this year's project. So we're fine for this year, and I feel that we'll be doing okay for next year. Again, we'll look at what the numbers bring in as this evolves. Water revenue loss and wastewater revenue loss, those are because the restaurants won't be operating, and neither will the lodge. The lodge is one of our highest users. We are still receiving base fees, but we just aren't getting that usage fee. And so that's what the projection is there. Again, we just did the billing, and it looked like it kind of was on par. We just kind of have to wait and see, and go on a month-by-month basis. One good piece of good news with the meters that were installed is we will be able to start reading on a monthly basis, which will give us a better idea much sooner as far as how the revenue is tracking versus waiting every 2 months. That monthly reading won't start until June. But that's sort of the projected revenue impacts. Measures we've already taken, again, so in March, initially on the agenda was for a copier contract that was just taken off the agenda straight off. Last year, we already reduced our insurance costs, and we also canceled janitorial services this year. So those are the things that impact the general fund. For streets, we aren't sidewalk striping, and that's in part due to Clark County not doing it. Their crews aren't going to other counties to provide that service this year. We also decided no to sidewalk grinding and not doing the Kanaka Creek Bridge repair. Some other costs that we've been able to save were unknowns when we started taking over the wastewater treatment plant. And so we've been able to save $70,000 for the operations contract reduction. The total contract cost, I think right now, as of AP through May, is about $25,000 that have been spent on that. And that's the contract with Ronald Muller. So that leaves about $5,000, which we may use for additional training that was canceled again due to COVID. We don't know whether or not that will take place by the end of the year. And then the reduced solids hauling, again, as Carl's been talking about, we've been able to reduce the costs for hauling because we've been able to optimize some of the plant. And so we're comfortable, even with summer coming and some other changes that have occurred at the plant, with removing $80,000 out of that budget, and comfortable again with that and not putting the fund at risk. And so with all of this, the general fund is still short quite a bit. And so one option to sort of recoup some of those funds for the general fund is to do a cost allocation. And so on page 118 is an example of a cost allocation option. One is to take all the legislative costs in the general fund. So that's your legislative, executive, and legal costs. And then they would be allocated to the finance cost allocation. So basically to the finance department, to streets, tourism, water, wastewater, and equipment services. And that would be based on agenda items. So if something for the wastewater, so the sewer updates on the agenda every month. And so that would be then tallied up in the allocation to that fund, because effort is going into creating that agenda item and council discussion and action items related to it. The finance cost allocation would then include the financials and records and any central services at City Hall. And again, that legislative cost allocation. And again, be allocated to streets, tourism, water, wastewater, and equipment services. And that would be based on number of transactions. And so there's a report that I pull out of BIAS, and it counts, and it can count the number of transactions per account and fund. So then it's purely transactional as far as the cost to do that transaction. It doesn't matter how much that transaction was, because the dollar amount doesn't necessarily impact what finance does on those types of things. and if it were dollar amount based, it sometimes then unfairly burdens the water and wastewater department above and beyond, just because those funds tend to have a larger dollar amount go through them. So those are some options to help with the financial impact. There are other cost allocation options we can kind of come up with if we need to. But outside of printing more money for the general fund, and again, I don't know how bad it's going to get or how good it's going to be. It's hard to tell at this point. We are able to open up faster than the other counties. It is, granted, it is a slow opening, but that is something that is it's something that Klickitat County doesn't have right now. I mean, even so, Clark County is able to open up to phase 2. They have that option to apply, similar to how we did. But again, it's all an unknown. And rather than budgeting on an annual basis, we're kind of budgeting on a month-to-month basis right now. And even in talking with staff, I mean, for the general fund and for all the other funds too, we already run pretty lean. In listening to what other cities are doing, you know, they're cutting staff, they're cutting a bunch of fluff that we don't necessarily have. We've already done it. There's no staff for us to cut. And where other cities seem to be not doing as much work, we haven't seen that. If anything, we're on the fast track, and we're doing a lot more work because of it, or during this time. So.
Any questions on that portion?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What? Okay. I'm wondering, this cost allocation proposal that you've got, is that for the 2020 budget? Yes.
It would be, and I would, so if council wants to go or wants me to research that more or get more details onto that, I will provide a more detailed memo with dollar amounts and everything at the next council meeting, and hopefully have a little bit more information as far as what the trend's looking like too.
And so would we, you know, all that budget process that we went through over a several month period where we approved this year's budget, that we would apply this dating back to the beginning of the year, or just like basically moving forward from May on?
It would be dated back to the beginning of the year.
So
we just reallocate the monies.
There is no allocation right now, so I would just start the allocation. Yeah, and it is more or less in talking with the mayor about this, it is a bit of a shell game, because you're getting money in the general fund, but more money then comes out of the other funds. So it's just in essence kind of trying to share the burden between all the funds.
And that's the overall goal, is to keep certain funds from being unfairly hit.
And then, is there a need for a special budget meeting, or does it just come through as a agenda item?
So for budget amendments along this way, because it's not just a cut and dry council approved a contract, I would probably advocate for a public hearing on it. So typically for your budget process, you have public hearings. Because this is a change to how we do budget, it would probably call for a public hearing.
Okay, and then you say that there's a need for documentation for the rationale for that allocation. Are we prepared to supply that?
Yes, yeah. So this is in essence, council. I might put it in a resolution form for council approve the cost allocation plan. One thing that happened, so in 2017 when I got here, the allocation of the administrator's time, from what I understand it anyway, it wasn't approved by council, and so the auditors were questioning how their time was allocated and whether or not it was unfairly allocated. I've been tracking my time, but absent of that, if you do anything outside of that, they would like something approved by council as far as this is our policy on how we're going to allocate these costs. And again, yeah, like Scott said, have it justified.
Liana, how did you end up on this cost allocation model? You said that there were several others, but you landed on this one. I'm assuming there's a reason why you picked this one instead of all of the other ones.
So this one would give the most to the general fund. Another cost allocation plan would again be just allocating my time based on some analysis. So, and when I say my time, it would be my time in the city administrator position. So when I allocate my time, I allocate it based on the finance costs, city administrator, which is just general admin work, sewer, streets, tourism, and everything. But it's that city administrator component that would be allocated then. Another option is that cities have is you can tax your own utility without a vote or any vote of the public, and there is no limit. So absent a cost allocation option, other cities, in order to get funds again back to that general fund, they charge their own utilities a utility tax. Stevenson hasn't been doing that, but that's another option and another route you can go. And the ways to use that utility tax again varies based on city. But again, there is no limit to that tax in the state yet.
So we're still leaning towards cost allocation versus utility taxing.
Yes.
So you just charge your own fund?
For the utility taxing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It still feels like a very well orchestrated shell game.
It is, yes, again. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where are we at here? Okay, just as a comment, generally speaking, as a rule, I do come to city council when I'm about to sign my name to something that attaches the city to it. In this particular case that Matthew was talking about, it was a timely request, and I felt that it was important to protect the investment of some construction that was already underway. So did sign that particular item to be forwarded to the governor. Next up, oh, waiving of fees. You want to walk us through this?
Yeah, so with the restrictions for the restaurants, one way to kind of get around that is to increase the outdoor seating. El Rio is working on increasing that outdoor seating to the side of their building. Big River Grill has the park next to them, and Red Bluff has used a couple of tables out front in the past. What this would do is this would allow them to use that entire sidewalk, and then if they wanted to block off 2 spots, they could put in more or less street furniture or a big deck to allow pedestrians ADA access around that seating. It opens up more seating and more customers for them to expand their business during this time. In talking with Big River Grill, he was mentioning, so in here it talks about waiving the fees for him. What he was actually also talking about more wasn't waiving the fees, but if he doesn't use it, not charging him for what he doesn't use. So he has the table set up. He's looking into setting up the tables, and if he uses it, he says, yes, I'll pay for what I'm using. But if he doesn't use it, he doesn't want to be charged for it.
So-
Scott, may I speak for a moment, please?
Yeah, so, okay, so are you going to talk about Big River Grill or?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it was, I think it was Park City, Utah, somewhere that I was not too long ago. Some of the restaurants had the parking spot or spots right in front of the restaurant set up as tables. So I don't know if that would be a good option for us or not, but
So-
it's something to consider.
And that was exactly what I was going to reference. Exactly is because I've seen that in the past. On some different webinars, and I've seen it in action in Wenatchee, where you would, in essence, use the parking spaces in front of your business for outdoor seating. But depending on the type of traffic that you have on your street, you have to be careful about the safety of your diners. So what we've been kind of encouraging is to put the tables on the sidewalk and then use those parking spaces as the throughfare for pedestrians, so that you're not sitting at a table in the middle of the street while trucks go blowing by. So to Liana's point, there is a need for ADA access. So that's where you would build like almost like a deck. So it's curb height that would go out to street levels so that pedestrians could walk around your tables.
And so what the request is that we waive fees for the right-of-way permit if a business wanted to apply for it. It's, I think, the $25 for a right-of-way permit of this
And in
nature.
both scenarios, it's just kind of for all, paying for the month, it's the whole month, or is it certain hours, days? What are typically the parameters around those?
For the right-of-way permit,
Or for the
Yeah,
lease.
for either
For
the
the-
park or the sidewalk, yeah.
so for the park use, his contract is, I believe, for mid-May through mid-October, and it's $500 a month. For the right-of-way permit, it's $25 for your application fee, and there is no time limit. You just have to meet the requirements of the Public Works Department. So again, making sure it's ADA, making sure people can get around
Sure.
it, and making sure it's safe.
So, I mean, setting aside COVID for a moment, I have some concern about, a park that's supposed to be, a community asset, and yet then during the prime times when it would be accessible to everybody, in the dry seasons, put that in quotes, there's going to be tables in the way. I've gone through Vancouver and Portland when they have either the parking spots used for tables or the sidewalks, and it feels cramped. We already have a bit of an issue with parking on 2nd Street as it is. So I guess this bothers me just in a general sense. I understand why it's being brought forward around the COVID situation, but
Well,
Good point, Matthew.
with
Hang on, wait a second. Matthew, I'm not tracking you. It's an agreement that we set up with Big River Grill, a year ago?
The agreement was signed in 2018, and
18.
it expires in the end of 2020.
Right.
Mhm.
And then the right-of-way permits, whether they want to use that sidewalk purposes and they can meet the building departments, the Public Works' restrictions. I mean, they've done it in the past and they still. Maybe
I mean, if we're talking like one-off events, that makes sense. Absolutely.
No, I'm talking about
My
letting them
head-
use the property to service customers for their business.
Right. No, I know. That's what I'm saying. If it was one-off events, my concern is not there. My concern is if this is a regular thing. That's where my hesitation is.
Okay. Well, it's a regular thing with Big River Grill because we contracted with him and allowed him to go in and make a bunch of improvements so he could use that parcel during the summer months. The other businesses, whether they want to use their sidewalk and it can not impede, walking traffic, it's $25 to us. It's not a big hit to us, but it's a big benefit to those businesses that can service customers during the nice weather.
And then the other part that I would add to that is if you think about the sense of energy you get when you, now traffic aside, but when the farmer's market is in place, just you can feel the energy level rise when you go through that spot. So having those additional tables out front, I think, do provide not some more allure for our downtown.
Agreed. No dispute there.
May I add something?
Please.
So recalling the discussion around Walnut Park really was not being utilized by anything other than the farmer's market. And that was a big reason why I voted for the lease to Big River Grill, because Justin's really using it. Like it makes me so happy to see customers sitting out there. And the way that he did it actually does leave some space in the park for other folks to use. So he's not actually the way that he did it last year anyway, which, you know, I don't know how he's going to do it this year, but with the planters and the way he had it roped off, other people, regular public, the GQ public walking by there was space for them to sit and use the park if they wanted to. So it wasn't really an all or nothing proposition, which to your point, Matthew, I think was a good thing. And I'm really excited to hear this conversation because it's one of the things I think that the city has at its disposal in terms of how can we help businesses stimulate safe places for people to come and spend their money and to congregate and to eat. And it's very challenging for some of our businesses who aren't next to a park or who don't have outdoor spaces. So I think it's a really great thing that the city is talking about waiving the right-of-way fees. And I think from my perspective, at least, it feels like it's a relatively easy thing we can do to say to our business community, yeah, we're here for you. This is a small thing we can do. And I want to see those patrons eating at those restaurants.
Yeah, Amy, to follow
I
up.
appreciate the extra info. Thank you, Amy.
You may remember Justin had a hard time even last summer just because of the yellow jackets and the bees that sort of took over this area, which caused, and he really didn't have access to that property for about a month of the summer or the good weather portion. And I know Steve and Carly, they got frustrated with the Liquor Control Commission restricting them on what they could do in front of the building. So now that they're trying to use the side of the building, you know, if customers sit there, that's great for them. You know, it's tough with that little retaining wall that kind of goes up beside it. But I think that it's $25 on the right-of-way fee. That's not huge, but I'm not a big fan of waiving that. You know, I think that if they want to use it, it's $25. Whether we hit Justin for the $500 per month, I think we ought to say, well, look, Justin, we'll only charge you for the months that you do use it. I mean, you know, it's not fair if he's not able to use it for either, you know, COVID-19 reasons or weather reasons. He chooses not to, and then we still charge him. Doesn't seem fair.
Now, to be clear, this waiving the fee does not mean they don't have to get the permit, correct? They still have to get the permit.
Correct.
Okay.
So where are we on, are we looking for approval to waive those fees?
I would need a motion, I believe, to change the contract, the license agreement with Big River Grill. And if I get council direction, I can come back at the next meeting with language.
I think we just need an addendum to the contract.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, the Big River Grill is actually a license agreement that specifies a particular monthly amount. So we'd have to do a kind of a summary license agreement amendment that would provide that some mechanism that if he's not going to use it, he's going to have to pay. I don't know what you do if it's less than a month, whether you prorate it. We'll have to figure that out, but we can do something relatively simple.
And is it possible, to Matthew's point, if Justin is not going to use it in a particular month, is it possible for us to make sure that that part that he's got roped off is open so that if somebody else wants to sit there and access the public park, they're able to do so? That to me feels like a fairer, way to respond to that.
Yeah, we could provide for, that he would have to open that section up if he's not going to use it. And we'd want him to give us some reasonable notice,
Yeah.
month period, that he's not going to use it, so that we can make sure that, he does what he needs to do.
Yeah, and I don't think he needs to remove his planters or even necessarily the tables. That can all stay there. It's just, I would want it to be available if a person walking by, a community member, wanted to sit.
Okay, well, this will come before you guys anyway,
Okay.
probably next meeting. So we'll put something together for you.
Thanks, Ken.
And now, as far as the right-of-way fees, can I get you guys to chime in on that?
My personal opinion is that we don't waive the fee. It's $25. I realize that we're trying to encourage the businesses, but if they want to use the sidewalk, I mean, it is some staff time. Make sure that, Sean's got his tables in the right spot, or Steve's got his tables in the right spot. And, I mean, it's $25 at the end of the day.
Who's going to build these decks?
That's on the business.
Okay, so, all right.
I'm in favor of waiving the fees as a small gesture of goodwill on the city's part towards our businesses.
As am I.
I have a question.
Who's that?
This is Mary. Does the city have any liability if a car runs into these people? If they're in the street or the right of way?
So the idea that the plan that any right-of-way permit we would insist that the pedestrian walkway go around the tables out closer to the street. So the tables wouldn't be close to the street, wouldn't be on that part of the right-of-way. So I guess it's the same risk that anybody would have walking on a sidewalk.
Your description just sounds different from what you're saying. It sounds like they want to extend into the street parking portion for at least 2 parking places.
So the way it's set up is that they can use up to 2 parking spaces in front of their business. The plan that we're presenting is that the tables would go on the sidewalk itself, and that any pedestrian traffic would have to be diverted around those tables, and that's where they would use those 2 parking spaces, for up to 2 parking spaces, to divert pedestrian traffic. But it still has to maintain ADA access, and that's where the one option would be like a deck, so that anybody that was on foot could, there wouldn't be an elevation change that they would have to maneuver around while they were walking around those tables.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
We've never allowed them to actually be in the parking spaces before. Just as a matter of course, we've never allowed that.
Well, I don't know if that's completely true, Robert. We essentially gave a parking spot to Napa for their loading and unloading.
But that's okay for their loading and unloading when they're actually using it for that purpose, as opposed to having it blocked off for.
Yeah, but if you try, they basically own that parking spot.
Okay.
Excuse me, Brian McNamara, may I interject just something that, according to what Mary said, is since those people would be stepping into a lost sight vision between parked cars, say on either side of those 2 things, is there any way we could, at the exterior limit out towards the street, put some sort of flag up that would reach above your standard car? Just an aside. Thank you.
So obviously,
like that.
Safety is obviously going to be of utmost concern, and that's the reason why the thought is to divert pedestrian traffic as opposed to pushing the seating out into the street. So that'll be something that we'll have to go, and that'll be part of that review, is to make sure that we feel that the public safety is not in danger.
Why don't you just let them use the space that the Stevenson Farmers Market uses during the week at least, and the farmers market there only during the summer. And then some other businesses could maybe put up tables too, and they could all be socially distanced. And there's plenty of space in that area. Just a
So
thought.
It does come down to proximity and what makes sense for a business. And right now we're kind of talking about the El Rio, but it's really more in a general sense because El Rio does have options. As it turns out, they're building some dining into the bank parking lot that's right there. So they're not going on that little tiny alleyway on the courtyard side. Yes, that is a plan that could be presented to go along the sidewalk because that does work out in a proximity sense. But if somebody, say on Russell or further down Second, wanted to use more of the sidewalk, there are options available for them to use.
I really like Mary's idea. Like, it reminds me of the way that they do the plazas in Europe, where the restaurants, all the
Exactly.
tables are in the center of the plaza, and then the restaurants have people who ferry the food, around. Like, we could open
This is
that up.
America. We like just our own little thing.
It's America. Jesus, Amy.
Okay,
Yeah.
so don't get stuck on the usage of parking spaces. This is just a suggestion, one way that a business could use a right-of-way permit, one way that a business could add outdoor seating. As it turns out, El Rio could use the sidewalk that heads out in front of the courtyard. You guys are 100% correct on that part, if they wanted to apply for that right-of-way permit. Other options would and could include the use of up to 2 parking spaces to accommodate outdoor seating.
So these are all hypotheticals then. So
Yes, every bit of it is hypothetical, absolutely. But we are, this is one of the things that we talk about on a regular basis is how are we going to help our businesses? How can we help them get up and running? How can we help them reverse the flow of money? So anything that we can think of that makes sense for us, any way that we can find some token way to help them out, we're not, it's certainly not no right off the bat until we talk about it. So this is one more way that we can do our best to help our businesses.
So motion to approve a waiver of the right-of-way fee for businesses seeking to use sidewalk activities for their businesses.
Is that your official first?
It'd be a motion. I'm gonna vote against it, just so everybody knows, but I'm trying to move this along just so we can get to the next day. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Second.
All right. So for first and a second,
Yeah.
is there any further discussion? All right. So as I call roll, yay or nay, please. Matthew,
I love it, but nay.
Robert,
Nay.
and Paul,
Yes.
Amy.
Aye.
So that's a tie.
2-2 dies.
So is this a tiebreaker for the mayor?
Yeah,
is
it's
it a money
not.
matter?
It's a financial matter. So it dies.
Okay. So we will not be waiving right-of-way fees, and then we'll have some language next month to discuss BRG agreement, lease agreement.
I just like it when Matthew and I agree.
Okay, so a couple more items on the COVID update. There has been a lot of curiosity from outside of the county about how this is all going for us, what kind of message we want to give to the general public. And this has been one of those situations where, so for example, KGW was out and interviewed a couple of us, and the message that we presented, that's the message that they gave for us. So the message was, we're excited for this opportunity to move into phase 2, but it's guarded enthusiasm. This is a great chance for businesses to get going again, but we're also very concerned about the safety of not only the businesses and their employees, but our residents and any of the guests that go into the restaurant. So give us a couple of weeks to get our feet wet, test the system, feel comfortable about it, and then we'll start feel more comfortable about inviting more out-of-town visitors. for a town that depends a lot on tourism, we can't wait to see everybody when the time is right. But give us a second. Just let us figure this out and move forward and make it the slow reemergence that it was intended to be. So that message was conveyed exactly the way it was presented. And the message that I gave that reporter is, it's more times than not when we get news people out here, it's because of something bad that has happened and there's a trial in the courthouse. We very rarely see news coverage just because it's a great place to be and wouldn't you like to be out here. So it was a kind of a refreshing change that we were given a chance to present a message to the general public, and that's exactly the way it's been presented so far. So said, thank you very much. You earned a little bit of trust for that. So that is, and the other part of that is the safety of customers. Tabitha was very poignant. It was a great point, because I said, hey, I'm going to bat for you on this contact tracing. Restaurants were the only service sector that were required to do that. No other service sector was required to do that. The governor heard the pushback and he changed the rule. So I was telling Tabitha, hey, we're going to bat for you. And she goes, Scott, that's great. But right now, that's not my concern. The business isn't that great right now that it's that much of a burden. I don't want to be the restaurant that is credited with being the attack vector, the vector of the new case, the new COVID case in Skamania County. This is where I need your help. So message received. So that's anything that we can do to help the businesses to be safe, feel safe, and make their customers and employees feel safe as well. So once we can get past that psychological barrier, then that's what's going to help us get things going in the right direction again. Marketing messages, just read an article today, that's great, but you need to tend to the psyche of your customers and your employees. So that's one of the things that we're going to start helping with the messaging with our business owners. All right, does anybody have any other comments or questions about the COVID update?
I just have a question. We only have about 500 tests in the community. And according to Kirby Richards, the congregated care facilities will be tested in this coming week. That means the jail, assisted living, and those types of foster homes probably too. So are you all making any effort to push for more tests for Skamania County so that anybody who wants a test can get it on demand? Not that you've traveled or that you have symptoms or anything, but just to figure out if you have any asymptomatic people in this community. You know that there have to be somewhere. We had a lot of sick people in December and January in this community, especially among the seniors. And so I don't hear that in any of this opening up stuff. I think the governing bodies should be also making demands for testing and labs as one of their primary focuses during this opening up period. Thank you.
So the last update was that County Health had 238 tests. You're right. They did announce that they were going to go proactively test these communal facilities. But then we're also counting on County Health to keep their inventory of testing. So yes, testing has been touted as is being promoted as the best way to move forward. Testing. So Kirby knows that, the county knows that, the County Board of Health knows that. So yeah, they have the channels to get those testing kits. They understand the importance of having those testing kits, and we are keeping an eye on their efforts. But I guess no, we have not leaned on her specifically to do that. I think that the County Health Board has been doing that for us.
I wouldn't count on that.
Okay, was there another comment?
Yes, Scott?
Yeah.
I can speak to the Rock Cove because my 97-year-old mother-in-law lives
Hang on,
there.
hang on. I know who you are, but can you announce yourself for the record, please?
My name is Meg Gittens.
Thank you.
My 97-year-old mother-in-law lives at Rock Cove. They tested all of the residents and all of the staff about, I want to say, a week and a half ago. They all tested negative. Having said that, our numbers are extremely low because we do not have enough tests. However, I just want to address that. Rock Cove has been tested,
Thank you.
as has our staff.
Thank you. Okay. Carl.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so moving on to the wastewater treatment plant update. Another month with no influent or effluent violations. BOD is still down. We did have a couple of spikes, but the overall monthly average was still way down. So I reached out to the Department of Ecology for our settleability issue that we're having, and was hooked up with a gentleman named Carl Jones, who put us in contact with a gentleman out of California who did an analysis on our biosolids and found 2 filamentous bacteria that we have within our system at the wastewater treatment plant. They're identified. We took that information, gave it back to the Department of Ecology, and now are waiting for a path to move forward in treating them. There's several options, but we have to include the Department of Ecology with it to move forward slowly and steadily and not shock our system. So that is the update for the wastewater treatment plant. Ian has been taking care of the information going back and forth. Big shout out to Victor Santa Cruz. Don't know who he is, but he did that study as a professional courtesy. And again, it was somebody we found through the Department of Ecology. So we will be moving forward on that, and stay tuned. I really hope I have some sort of a path forward for an update next month of what we're doing to deal with bacteria. So basically what they're doing is, if you look at them under a microscope, they look much like tentacles, like daddy long legs, and they're just holding on to all of our solids and will not let them settle properly, which again, it's not, we are not seeing a negative effect, but we could do better. So that's what we're aiming for.
So this would help with the efficiency of the plant?
Correct. Yeah, it would help when it overall efficiency, and it would help further to with our biosolids hauling, and also with separation, water separation. We would be able to, in effect, get more water out of our digester, out of our thickener, which would give us more capacity.
Hey, Carl, real quick, one question. On the spikes that you had, were they after a heavy rainfall? Do you know?
No, they weren't.
Okay. There wasn't any environmental or weather tie to the event?
Was not weather related.
Okay.
And then Carl, are you prepared to talk about the funding that you have here on your report? Or is that Eliana?
I can talk to that. So I spoke with EDA, and they said that it's in process and should be going to DC soon. And then after that, it'll be in DC for a bit for their review. And we should hear back sometime in July on the EDA funding. The other part of that is we approved the letter of conditions for the USDA loan, which is the match for the EDA grant. And so we're working on the conditions related to that. And so that will also probably, that will also come forward in a budget amendment, because there are some requirements related to reserve levels for not only the bond payment, but also for, I believe, short-lived assets.
Great. And before we move on, Good job, Carl. This is all, the trends are great, and it's good to see that they're not anomalies and that they're holding true. So good job to you and your crew for keeping it going for us.
And the high strength for
Yes,
they're still to side stream. So even in the a little bit of an economic hit they took, they're still side streaming. So big shout out to them.
And then also, I don't know that we talk about this enough. I know that we talk about, the money that we saved when Ron was impressed and was able to move on, but going from a vendor, a third party running the plant to in-house in the short amount of time that we did it. Well, first off, just switching to in-house is kind of a big deal. So I hope that you guys remember that when we see these good reports that we took a big chance on moving in-house, and luckily that chance is paid off and is continuing to pay off. So it's a big deal. So thanks again, Carl.
One thing that I wanted to mention that it wasn't in the budget, but one thing that the city was looking to do was to fast track the laboratory changes that need to take place. There is a test that has to be done whenever they haul the solids that is atrocious if you're in that building, and the improvements would have made it much more palatable, I guess, to be in that building. And so and that would have been about $100,000, possibly more, depending on how much equipment we would get for setting up the lab. And that project has been postponed and will just be rolled into the overall improvements to the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay.
And Scott, I'm sorry, can I ask one more question?
Please do.
Thank you. Carl, I'm just curious as to whether you have any more information on Tabitha's decision to halt brewing operations in Stevenson, and whether there's anything we can do from the partnership side of things to make it easier for her to stay.
Yes, I'm assuming you're talking about with the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, I'm talking about fees specifically, and contracts, and I guess I don't know if you have any other information on their decision to halt brewing, and whether the fees are a big impact on that.
I have not had a chance to talk to Tabitha about her schedule or if she's going to restart. Waiving fees, it's my understanding that the side streaming is a sort of a credit, correct me if I'm wrong, Leona, off of the water sewer bill.
So for Walking Man, we don't have a contract for, and so their side streaming, they aren't using dirt huggers to my knowledge.
They're using a couple local people that use it for feed, from what I understand.
So if we get that documentation, yeah, we can use it as a credit against their bill as far as stuff that's not going down the drain.
Right. And it's all, it's kind of getting back to kind of the old, not really argument, but the conversation of how much do they actually contribute to BOD down to the plant, right? And then it comes back to infrastructure that they need to put in, effluent meters to measure that, so we can come up with an actual BOD pounds that they're contributing to the plant, right? We haven't really had any discussions on how the city may be able to help put that infrastructure in.
Okay, so maybe Scott or somebody else could at some point reach out and have a conversation with Tabitha and just let her know that that we want to, make sure that she feels valued as a part of our business community, and that the city is here to partner with her.
One thing I have talked with her about is doing a sub-meter. So again, it would require her to do some infrastructure changes inside, but meter what water is used by the brewing facility versus what water is used by the restaurant, and then what water is also used by, she also has a tenant, because they all have different waste streams. And so then you can use that to charge appropriately the uses that are using the water. And so that would require a change to our standards, which I have a template from. I think the city of Seattle has a sub-meter program. Again, it wasn't required before because we didn't charge based on effluent strength, whereas now, because we are charging based on effluent strength and there are different uses within the same facility, I do see a need for us to look at that.
Cool. And I mean, this is all conjecture on our part, right? Like, we don't even know if this has anything to do with her decision. But I would hate to let it go without at least, asking. And I could do that too. I could just call her up and ask her.
So I guess, Amy, this is kind of news to me. Are they not going to brew any longer, Walking Man?
Well, that's what I read in your memo.
Well, I talked to her not long ago, and maybe 2 weeks ago at this point, and they were just halting brewing for the time being. They weren't.
That was my
planning on
understanding.
stopping it permanently.
That they were just halting for now to resume. I didn't realize that they were looking to not do it anymore.
I'm just getting this off of your memo, and maybe I'm making a big thing of it, but it says in your memo, they will evaluate whether to continue brewing in Stevenson or arrange for some other option, either offsite or contracted going forward.
Who put that in that memo?
That would be me. That was based on a conversation Tabitha had with me.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Ben, what page are we on, Liana?
I just sent an email to council for the Tolliver stuff. So we're on page 142.
142. You're all over the place, Scott. Killing me.
I have the agenda on one screen and I have the packet on another screen, but finding the spot. Okay, 142. Ben.
Okay. Also want to share, as I look through it tonight, I forgot a 3-page document that was just emailed to everybody. I will try to put that on the screen here in a second. That's the document that would provide all the city council's findings and conclusions related to this project. The project itself is a 5-lot subdivision over off of Ryan Allen Road and what is currently private Holstrom Road, a portion of which would become public. The Planning Commission has reviewed this and they're recommending approval of it, subject to several conditions. At this stage of the project, the record is largely closed. That's how it transfers from the Planning Commission to you. It's temporarily closed. If you're unsatisfied with the Planning Commission's recommendation in any way, then it would be your responsibility to officially open the record and schedule your own public hearing where the project would be reviewed anew. The Planning Commission's recommendation starts after that 1-page memo that lays out what I just said, and it includes several conditions. And I wanted to really note on this that there's a tension between 2 of the conditions. One is about the geotechnical report and suitability of the project, and the other is about stormwater. And so the applicant here may be challenged to meet those. So the city council, in approving this preliminary plat, may never see a final plat on this based on those different conditions. So it's something to be considerate of. We've talked to the applicant. They believe that they can move forward within those channels and find solutions. But the solutions are really on them at this stage, and they'll be reviewed by the Public Works Department and the city engineer on that in the future. So if they don't meet those standards, it'll be the Public Works Department, or it'll appear like the Public Works Department has said that this is not possible for them. But that's something that really exists in what you guys are approving tonight. I don't have authority to share screen, so the 3
You want me to share it here?
Okay.
I can share it.
There's a 3-page approval that dives into the 6 sections of the subdivision code that the council really acts on. In the packet, there's the there's several more that the Planning Commission reviewed and evaluated and recommended conditions based on. These council ones are really just procedural, saying that this project has been reviewed by the City Council. And if you go forward with this, the approval of the Planning Commission recommendation, it says that you've reviewed their proposal and are satisfied, concurring with it and approving it. I believe it says outright.
Where do you want me to go?
Yeah, sorry. There you go. Just stopping there. So you're summarily approving the proposal by concurring with the Planning Commission's recommendations. In the packet, and I'm getting there myself. On page 166, bottom of 165 onto 166. This is where some of those tensions are that I'm talking about. So in condition 10.1, the site development needs to meet the recommendations of their geotechnical engineering report on the project. And then it goes on into those other conditions related to the drainage system for the project and meeting the city's standards. And so where the engineering report on this is saying don't allow stormwater to infiltrate onto the site, potentially destabilize or weight down or lubricate the soils underneath these homes or in the neighborhood. The typical procedures that we require talk about infiltration as a way to treat the stormwater. So they will need to find other solutions for stormwater that areas that are more geotechnically stable wouldn't have to fund. If they can't find those solutions, they wouldn't be able to go forward with the project.
Questions?
Ben?
Yeah, so I believe it was back in the autumn we had passed these kind of the greenery ordinances and whatnot around the road. So with Holstrom, part of that turning to public, and I believe there was another road involved as well. Would those standards apply here?
Yes, they do. The proposal that's been submitted is for a half road improvement, and the half of the road that's being constructed with this project, but sorry, let me explain what that is. Where there's a road that exists along the boundary between two properties, and it's apparent that one side would be developed and access off of that road, and then the property adjacent to that would also utilize that road. Developers can install a half street improvement. And so in this case, the half street would be 2 travel lanes, curb and storm improvements. The responsibility then would be on the adjacent owner to install the parking lane, the greenery or planter strip that you're talking about, and the sidewalk. And so that's all in the engineering proposal that's attached to the Planning Commission recommendation.
So really, no, it's not going to be included due to the technicality in that sense.
The standard
because the other side doesn't have to, the other property owner doesn't have to develop that part, correct? The planter strip, the bike lane.
Correct. On page 174 of the packet is where that half road improvement is shown. And so the part on the right, if you rotate, or on the bottom of the screen, is what's proposed to be constructed with this project. And the part on the left or top of the screen would be the responsibility of the future owner before they'd be able to access that road.
Yeah, that's great, Ben. Can we make that any smaller for our screens here?
You want me to stop sharing or keep this up?
I mean, I've got his document over here as well. You sent it out on the,
I think we're good.
yeah. So that, I
And
mean,
then
the
just kind
issue
of
is
as a
just.
person, sorry, go ahead, Robert.
No, please. You had other comments. Go ahead.
Just out of personal curiosity, with the noise abatement, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. just seems a bit late. Is that typical for our code?
Yeah. Our code adopts the state's noise requirements, and those noise requirements are between 10 and 7. Any allowed noise has to be 10 decibels lower than the daytime hours.
Okay. Makes sense. Thanks.
Robert?
Oh, yeah, no, I just, the only comment then we have here is we're looking to approve what planning has approved. If we don't like what planning's done, then we have to open our own hearing on the application. Is that right, Ben?
Correct.
Okay.
Meg, did you have a comment on this on this section? Is that why your hand's up? I guess I should unmute her.
I did have a comment.
Okay.
We have no architectural committee. So how are we going to monitor this rebuild, so to speak?
When you say rebuild,
Everything on the downtown area, every subdivision. I think we're speaking about the subdivision. Is there going to be an architectural committee on this?
this is a subdivision on Tolliver. This is not the downtown.
Okay. Is there going to be an architectural committee on that?
Well, okay, we're hang on, hold on to that thought, Meg. We'll address that when we get down to that part. So hold on to that thought.
Okay.
Let me try to help with that. At this time, within the proposal that was submitted, there isn't a homeowners association or CCNRs that are part of the proposal. Those are not required in Planning Commission's recommendation of approval either. It's possible that between now and when the final plat would be recorded, that there may be a private homeowners association that would be generated that would have its own architectural review requirements. Those are outside of the city's control. What we do have for projects like this are the same setback and building height, lot coverage, density, and dimensional requirements that apply in other areas of the city, and they would apply equally to this project.
And there's no green area that's on this project, right? I didn't see any.
No.
Okay. So there's nothing that would require mutual maintenance on behalf of the 4 owners.
Could be with the stormwater solutions.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Meg, I apologize. I thought you were talking about our downtown plan. So I didn't mean to shut you down on this plan. So if that's what you were looking for, I apologize.
No problem. I got my question answered.
Very good.
So do you need a motion from us, Ben, to approve planning's decision through today?
Yes. Was there a motion on the agenda?
Yeah, the motion on the agenda is to concur in the Planning Commission's recommendation and summarily approve the preliminary plat proposed for the Tolliver subdivision.
Ditto. I'll make
So
that
moved.
motion.
I'll second.
So we have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, aye or nay, Matthew?
Nay.
Any? Okay, Paul,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, now on to the very lengthy section in our packet. Ben?
Yeah. So you all have been provided with the complete application for the Rock Cove Hospitality Center. This is a shoreline substantial development permit that's being submitted to you guys. The process for these is that we receive a complete application, provide notice to the community, 30 days, or I guess 30 days plus a week of opportunity for the community to provide comments, either substantive comments or comments that the city council conduct a public hearing on this proposal. The process also requires that you conduct a public hearing if the project will cost more than $250,000. And so this one will, and we're asking you to set a public hearing for the June council meeting at 6:30 to establish the time also. The code gives you the option to send projects to the Planning Commission for review. We're asking that you do. The proposal that's in front of the state right now for your shoreline management plan update would have all these projects going to the Planning Commission instead of the City Council. So this is a good way to get them involved in that. That would not be as in a public hearing sense. So the record would be totally yours and their recommendation would come to you at the same time as any of the public testimony on the project specifically. So the initial memo went out prior to the expiration of the public comment period, which closed today at 5 p.m. We received one comment during that time. Mary Rapar provides some substantive comments on public access for the site. And I'm taking that as a request for the City Council to hold a public hearing and for her to be notified of the project moving forward. So the recommendation is still the same. Send the project to the Planning Commission for their recommendation and to schedule a public hearing at your next meeting.
Ben, this is the property that's county property and it was bought by these guys, right? It's the old Copli. Okay.
Not Copli. Copli is the one that's on the Columbia. This was just a veneer mill. That was on
veneer, yeah. I always called it Copli. I know the one that burned and the fires across the railroad tracks, but this, okay. Have you seen an actual, I was looking quickly for a diagram of what they're proposing for the multi-unit and access points?
It should be in there.
Their schematic or something?
Page 201.
Okay, I'm gonna get there. Thank you. There we go. And what you're looking for is just City Council then kicking this to planning so planning can accept an application for the shoreline review, and then they'll have to go forward with all the other permitting process, right?
Correct. Yeah. So one, refer it to the Planning Commission for their recommendation on the project. Two, schedule your own public hearing.
Ben, can I have a interject? You're going to be the first city that I represent that has actually tried to conduct a public hearing. Are you anticipating that they'll have the in-person restrictions lifted by the June 18th meeting? Because I haven't seen anybody for a public hearing yet under these COVID conditions.
That was the anticipation, yeah. But if it should be delayed, then
you're not subject to a shot clock on this, is that right?
Let me verify that a second.
As long as the shot clock doesn't happen before, say, the July meeting, then you might be able to kick it forward. It's just, you know, the necessary and routine requirements of the governor's order is, the AG has interpreted that as pretty limiting. So if the governor's order is still in effect for in-person meetings, if you can, I'd recommend you kick that to a later date.
And with phase 3, if we're able to get there, it allows gatherings with no more than 50 people.
Yeah, you'd probably be all right if you're in phase 3. Given the size of our city, I'd highly, I mean, you might want to do some preliminary to see, some sort of outreach to see what your anticipated attendance might be. But if you're in phase
This
three,
doesn't involve Second Amendment. We'll be good.
you should be okay.
The code says it can't be held within 15 days after today, but it doesn't have a shot clock on the other end of it.
Okay. All right, that's just my 2 cents. I've been tending, because that AGO on the subject is really restrictive as far as what they're anticipating. Anything that they consider might have substantial public interest. They don't really want you to do a straight Zoom type meeting. But if we're in phase 3, we should be okay. So just keep an eye on that. That's all.
Okay. So we will do that. And if we run into any concerns for that June meeting, we'll ask the council to continue it to a future meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
And to confirm, there was no variance that was needed. This is just because of price tag and whatnot. It has to go through this process, correct?
Correct.
I know I'm out over my ski tips on this one, but if they're going to put in that many bedroom units and we're going to end up building that fire hall across the street and up about 100 yards, we're going to need traffic control devices. So when planning gets this, they might want to put that as a condition to their development, that they've got to put a traffic control device at their entrance. Just a little forethought.
I would additionally request forwarding to the commission my concern of we're more in need of affordable housing than additional rentals. That could stay on their radar as well.
And where is the existing boat ramp that they're referring to?
Calling it a ramp is giving it a lot of credit. There's
that's
in the water.
That's not a ramp.
There's a graveled area that goes from the top down to the water that a lot of people currently use for non-motorized access.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
They let their dogs run down there to get to the water. It's just an easier way to get there.
And they'd maintain room for a truck to get in, back in, a boat.
Oh, it's non-motorized, so you're only going to be dropping in, paddle boats, kayaks.
Well, I still don't want to carry it.
So
I just didn't know how much space there would be in the plan.
Yeah, on the 201 that we talked about, where there's 3 peninsulas generally. I'm looking at the one that's on the far east of the site, and that ramped area is noted. The vehicular access here still is a ways from that.
Yeah. Well, God bless them if they want to try to build that.
Pretty exciting. This is not a Maldonado project?
It is.
It is.
It is.
Yeah. So watch for the curveballs.
Now I'm getting it. Okay.
And I thought the county did an EPA 2 on this one and it came back positive. So is that not true?
Nothing that I ever heard about that.
God, I thought they did a 2 on that and it came back positive. All right, they haven't cleaned it up. They got to clean it up. Their problem. So I guess I'll make a motion to approve the shoreline application being processed by Planning Commission as presented.
I'll second.
Is that the motion okay? We have a first and a second. Is there any other discussion? So wait a minute. We're referring this to planning. Is that the motion that you made?
Correct. Yeah. Motion to refer the application to the Planning Commission.
To the Planning Commission. All right. Wanted to make sure that part was in there.
Yeah. And set a date to be determined as opposed to a fixed date of June 18th based on governor's restrictions or requirements for public hearings on the Rock Creek Cove Hospitality Project.
Are you still in for a second, Matthew?
I am. Thank you.
All right. Aye or nay, yay or nay? Paul,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
Amy,
Hi.
Matthew.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Liana.
So at the last council meeting, we mentioned that the moratorium on single-family residences in the C1 district was expiring, and wanted to know, and the planning commission was still listening to feedback from the zoning changes, and because of COVID, they weren't able to hold any in-person public hearings related to any of the zoning changes to allow for their discussion. And so they were wanting to wait until they could hold in-person meetings before they did any additional work on the zoning changes that were suggested or proposed. And so this moratorium the moratorium expired, I believe it was Wednesday. And this moratorium would be starting it anew rather than extending it because, again, it is expired. If this is adopted, then a public hearing will take place where council would review the findings of fact, take public comment. If the ordinance was not approved at that meeting, or if the findings of fact were not approved at that meeting, then the moratorium is null and void. And the proposition is to just have this moratorium in place until those zoning changes are made. Or the decision regarding the zoning changes is made.
So am I understanding you? What you're saying is we're going to basically buy ourselves some time until we can have an actual public hearing?
Yes.
6 months.
Yeah. Okay.
We're just kicking the can.
Yeah.
Actually, the public hearing has to happen within 60 days for the findings of fact. But the moratorium lasts, you're right, Robert, it's a 6-month moratorium.
But what happens if we can't have that public hearing in 60 days? I mean, you're not gonna be able to answer that question. Nobody is.
Well, if you don't have the public hearing, then it expires.
Right, but
and null and void. But yeah, sure. Our hope is that this whole in-person meeting prescription is going to be gone one of these days, but nobody knows.
In the ordinance that Curling has, I believe June 18th as the meeting date for a public hearing. So we'll again go forward with that, assuming that we can have it, and then kind of similar to the other matter, just leave it open to the July meeting as needed.
Leon,
I mean, I realize that this kind of messed with planning as far, COVID and being able to hold their hearings and whatnot, but we're a year and a half in on this. We just need to change the damn code. We know where we're heading with it, but to extend this now for another 6 months, we know where it's ending. I don't know.
We haven't had any applications, have we?
No.
Okay.
But we do have a lot of public comment.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I'd just like to interject that this is Brian McNamara. If you've read those comments, you can see that the property owners do not feel that they were duly notified of the first moratorium, and that we didn't see the need for that. There haven't been there's only been one new home built in probably 30 years in the downtown district, and that was across the street up a hill from the hardware store. And we've had plenty of open space for businesses here, as is outlined in the 18 different letters, of 11 of which of those actually come from property owners. And I have personal communication from 4 more that they didn't know, don't think it's necessary. And so we're asking that that this be let drop. And for all the reasons, I don't think I need to go into how many small businesses have left, how few houses have been built, and how the public eventually found out about it. But, you know, the request is of the property owners that I have talked to so far, that this go away. There's multiple millions of dollars worth of property down there without consideration. Thank you.
This is Mary Rapar. I'd like to add to my comments. I'm sure you can read them, and I think I was pretty succinct in what I thought about this. I really don't know where you're all going with this, because we don't have that many businesses or houses downtown to begin with. And I think we're spending a lot of time and effort on something that you really have no business as city council at this point in time to be involved in. Businesses come and go, residents come and go, and our community, I don't know if you're all trying to have a vision or something for downtown, but real people live here. And, you know, those of us who are staying in our community and supporting our local community don't have any problems with having houses downtown, single family residences downtown. There are real people who live in them. And if they want to have a business, especially because of COVID-19, and if more and more people work at home, I'm not sure that you have any business trying to prevent people from having a business in their home or having just a home where their business used to be. I hope I've laid it out more succinctly in my comments, but this all started with the building of a house, the proposed building of a house on a burned out hulk that sat in the middle of our downtown area for, I believe, 6 or 7 years. And we all looked at it and nobody said anything about it being a burned out hulk. And then when somebody comes in and wants to make a beautiful home there, suddenly we have a moratorium. And I totally agree with Brian. People in town were not notified properly of the first moratorium on this. I think the sucker should just go away and die peacefully, and y'all should spend your time with more pertinent and prioritized matters. Thank you.
Meg?
The whole thing has been bad. Starting with the house and those poor people that all they wanted to do was improve a property that got shot down at the last minute after being approved, and ends with the fact that we are going to take business away from our community. How do you take away from the business owners that are currently housing down there? So a business comes in, they fail. A lot of businesses fail here, and then shut them down so they cannot receive any income. I do not understand this.
Okay, so help me out with this. I'm looking at a moratorium that says no new construction for single family residences. So help me out where the wording says, if there is a business, and then go backwards.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but it happened when you forced somebody that took a beautiful, well, actually horrible lot, and then wanted to build a single family dwelling and had to build a triplex.
Okay, I'm not going to go back too far back on that. We did not force them to build that. They wanted to build something on that lot. They decided to build a triplex on that lot. I'm looking at the verbiage on this. Okay, Meg, I'm not going to get in an argument with you on this right now. I'm allowing for public comment, but we have to keep the conversation moving along.
All right, so my public comment is this. We are not addressing the parking issue. And yet we are holding on to this must-have rental issue, which I agree is a problem. That's my comment.
Thank you. Parking is part of the downtown plan that is picking up some speed, which will also address the zone changes that we've already kind of alluded to up till now. Am I missing something on this moratorium that describes what you can do as far as if it's a business, it has to stay a business? Am I missing that part on this moratorium?
Scott, can I say something? This is Monica Mosco.
Hey, Monica.
The other documents that the Planning Commission has in front of them, which is also titled Ordinance 2020-1157, talks about the other zoning amendments, including the legacy homes. I think that's what Meg was referring to, where a legacy home with a business such as mine, as an example, if I move out and this is 100% a business, when the business goes away, I cannot move back in. So those are the zoning issues that the Planning Commission is looking at, that is being driven by, as well as not allowing the single family detached dwellings. It's all together. And right now, tonight, you're correct. You are simply looking at your moratorium for your single family dwellings, but the larger issue on the ordinance 2020-1157 that was in front of the Planning Council has those other zoning changes. And there's option 1 and option 2. Same with someone such as the Crossing. They have another opportunity to go somewhere else for a few years, and someone runs a business in their property, and then that business leaves for whatever reason, they cannot move back and live in their home as a residence with the zoning changes in front of the Planning Commission.
Okay, so for tonight.
But those are tied into that moratorium. It's all tied in together.
Yeah, I'll try to build on what Monica's saying too. So you had adopted the previous moratorium and it would have expired this month. And you had given the Planning Commission with the direction to get you some changes to the code there. They were in the process of getting those changes, including the 2 options that Monica talks about. One would be able to allow the conversion of homes back and forth between residences and businesses. One would prohibit that. That discussion and the Planning Commission's deliberation of that stopped because of COVID-19. And since that stopped, it didn't stop the moratorium from expiring. And so that's where you guys are given the option now to continue it or adopt a new moratorium and wait for the Planning Commission's ability to revive that public comment on this. So they are definitely tied in together. The reason why we're doing this, or reason why the moratorium was proposed, is because the Planning Commission wasn't able to finish the community discussions.
So in my mind, we want to make sure that until we do have proper public discussion on this downtown plan there's been plenty of public input. We've had input all along the way. There's going to be plenty of discussion, and I welcome it. This is a big deal for us, the downtown plan. The downtown has always been our crown jewel, and we want to pick a direction that we can all be happy with. But I want to make sure that we are finding a way to say no new construction for single family homes until we have a further, a larger discussion on the rest of the downtown plan. And that's what I see in this document. But you're saying that there's something in there that says, oh, and by the way, this other thing that shouldn't be part of a moratorium. It should be part of a downtown long-term plan discussion?
We had this discussion, a very lengthy discussion on all of this when we did the comprehensive plan a few years back, Scott. And nobody really discussed houses downtown. We actually discussed the fact that we liked having some houses downtown in order to have a more mixed and diverse atmosphere and a livelier and more living atmosphere downtown. You have 18 comments that oppose this moratorium, and I number myself among them. Waiting for more and more discussion about something that people don't want is useless. It's spinning your wheels. So it appears that you are the only one who really wants this in some ways, since you're the one who put the moratorium on those people in the first place and then asked for permission later. So I really urge the city council to drop this moratorium and let's move on to the downtown Stevenson plan. We will live, I assure you that you will not get 20 applications for single family housing in your downtown area. And visions may be visions, but we all have different visions. So there's been plenty of public discussion, and I believe having 18 people comment on this is probably a pretty good public comment. Thank you.
All right, just before you go ahead there, Scott, I'm Brian McNamara. There has been no justification, to my knowledge, for this initially, other than as part of your plan for success. And, you know, the property owners down there in their letters to you have, and others have voiced that, you know, we don't exactly see that vision, nor do we see a need. And so, you know, we felt that as we were blindsided by it, none of the property owners I've known knew about it. And so it was unnecessary and basically a taking of our property rights and reduction of our value of our product that we bought. And you know, I don't see any recommendation for the tax assessor to then reduce our taxes on our property. I think this was unjustified, and I think that the public bears that out. And I'm done with that. Thank you very much, Scott.
Okay, so again, my concern and the reason the way I'm couching this is we want to try to avoid new construction of single family residences until we can get back to the larger discussion of adopting and massaging the bigger downtown plan. That's all I thought we were looking at tonight. So I was confused why the majority of the public comment had to do with the back and forth of businesses. I have had some discussions with that. I talked to Amy on the phone today and tried to present a case one way or the other. After looking at your comments and thinking about it, I can totally see your point, and I can see why it would warrant further discussion. I'm not trying to I could not see, you're right, I cannot see city council making that recommendation tonight, to make that decision tonight, to say whether or not you can go back and forth. I did not see that was going to be part of our discussion tonight.
Scott, if I may.
Go ahead, Paul.
Tonight, I think everyone who wrote in and has spoken tonight is correct for the most part, that the original moratorium was put on in kind of an emergency situation. It was quick, too quick. We wish it hadn't have been that quick, and I take responsibility for that, because the idea of disallowing single family homes in the downtown area had been on my radar for quite a while, and I just never brought it up to city council. I should have done that years ago. I didn't. However, moving forward, we do need to have good ordinances if that's where the city wants to go, the people of Stevenson, if we want to go to no new single-family home constructions in the downtown corridor. We need to have a well thought out plan that has plenty of public input. We can't get that right now. We simply can't. And so I think it's prudent to maintain the moratorium until which time we can get good public input.
And that was my intention with this as well.
Okay, one more. Is there any reason why you would not consider this plan? Say my White House there down on downtown burns down. I'd have to put a triplex in there. The legacy home situation, that's another story, but that's from residences that are occupied on January 1st of 2020. But that doesn't help the homeowners that bought their properties and had a business in there right now, but say that goes away, as Chris Anderson stated, then they couldn't go back. So my last plea is I think we should just let it drop until the moratorium can be discussed in public.
That is a good point. There are some questions that need to be ironed out in the final version of this idea. However, that's not what this is. This is literally, we can't make these decisions right now because we can't get public input right now. There's nobody that's going to kick anybody out of their house downtown in the next, as far as I'm concerned, ever. If it's a house, it's a house. And it will always be a house as long as you want it to be a house. For now, however, until we can get good public input and put together a good plan, we're simply going to have to wait. And the only way to wait is to maintain the moratorium or renew the moratorium.
No.
Thank you, Meg.
Cannot renew that.
Oh, Meg.
That is not a good plan.
Meg, you've had your opportunity, so thank you very much.
Scott, could I help clarify too? So
Sure.
With what Brian, the way Brian just described it also, and Brian, you can probably feel free to jump in here too. The moratorium, as Scott was trying to say, doesn't relate to that second discussion about converting back and forth in the future. So that's the one where we still need to have the discussions on, and where you participated in those discussions, and where the Planning Commission will really be evaluating.
Okay.
I understand. Thank you, Ben. And but I agree with you. But the thing is that we are just discussing the moratorium on new single family dwellings, whether it's on a open lot now or where one was. Both of those houses that were torn down downtown were torn down with the intention to put another house there. And so the issue, I'm sorry, Paul, I don't see why you need this action to renew a moratorium that is unpopular with the constituents in the first place. And why not just let it go and then let the Planning Commission deal with the public on their zoning proposal.
Okay, thank you all very much, members of the public that have chimed in. This, as the process goes, is if it goes that way, to vote on a moratorium, and then we have to then circle back and have a public hearing where we can discuss the findings of fact. Am I correct on all that so far, Ken and Liana?
That's correct. The findings of facts take place after you've conducted a public hearing to get the public's response.
Okay, so tonight we were talking about a moratorium on the new construction of single family homes in the downtown area. This moratorium, if it's voted on tonight, we'll have to look at findings of fact at the next meeting, if we can do that at that meeting, and also have a public hearing at that time where we can have even more public comment. So please, no more public comment today. I would like to have some discussion with the city council members and move forward one way or another. But it's my intention that this is a vote on a new moratorium on new construction of single family homes in the downtown area. until we have a chance to have the larger downtown discussion that we've been trying to have, but have been waylaid.
Correct.
So thoughts from council members, please.
I don't have anything to add. I know what we're doing. I understand it. It's still a process that we're working with.
Well, from my perspective, I really do not want to.
We lost you.
Can you hear me?
We lost you there. We lost most of it, actually.
I was going to say, I really don't want another McCloskey situation. I don't want a fire drill. I don't want to have property owners coming in thinking they can do something when, that's not the direction that that the city has decided to go. And I think the only way to prevent that from happening is an extension of the moratorium.
So my question, Ben and Leon, I'm sorry to cut you off. Was that Matthew that I just cut off?
Yeah, no worries.
I want to make sure that what I'm saying is reflected in the document that you guys are looking at. This is not a discussion of toggling back and forth between residential and business. I do want to talk more about that. I do have some thoughts. I have been weighing all sides. I do have thoughts on that, and I do look forward to the conversation on that. But is there anything in this document that says that that's what we're voting on tonight? Exclusively moratorium for 6 months unless we kill it earlier, and we do have to come to the next meeting with findings of fact and a public hearing.
Yes, single family residences in the
All right.
C1 zone.
Okay, we have heard quite a bit of public comment. You guys have had, oh, Matthew, sorry.
Oh, thank you. I just kind of wanted to reiterate again that I'm hearing what the public's saying. I also understand where the city staff and the council has been intending with this plan, but again, we're now ruling by moratorium, which we said we were going to cut back on and avoid. And I understand COVID threw a wrench in the planning cycle of things, but it was supposed to be resolved by now, and so now I understand we're having to extend this a little bit longer, but the code should have been changed by now. And now, we've riled the masses again, and for good reason, because they thought this would be over too, one way or the other.
So when we were staring down the barrel of the last moratorium coming to an end, it was really clear that I did not want to have to do this again, because I agree that governing by moratorium is not the right way to do it. There needs to be better planning than that. So I really wanted this to go away, but we could not get our new plan in place in time. So I really do hope, well, it sounds like there's some support for just to get through this until we can get to the bigger picture and have a more robust discussion with partners on both sides, looking at it from both sides as partners. And I certainly didn't intend for this discussion so that, as a stopgap to get to that discussion, to start drawing some lines in the sand, because this downtown plan is something that we definitely encourage public input through several public input meetings. We wanted to make sure that that we had check-ins with the public all along the way. This is a big deal for us, and it's an exciting project for us. And this, I didn't want this discussion to happen in this way so that we can't have a productive discussion when the time comes. So please hear what I'm saying, that this is just a stopgap until we get to that larger discussion. And I hope that we can have meaningful discussion when the time comes. This was not meant to get everybody mad, but here we are.
Well, so if the community disagrees with you, you're going to just let this go then, I hope.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you canceled public comment at this point.
Yep, I'm pretty sure that I'm done with that
Do you
part.
feel like you've heard enough from the council, or do you want more comment?
Well, we do need to either, entertain a motion.
Well, that's where I'm getting. If you need more
Okay.
discussion from council,
No,
so
I think
All
that
right.
I've said my piece and I've given everybody a chance to say theirs, I feel.
All right, motion to approve ordinance 2020-1157, reestablishing a moratorium on construction of new single-family residences in the C1 zone.
I'll second.
All right, yay or nay? Paul,
Yay.
Robert,
Yay.
Amy,
Aye.
Matthew.
Nay.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up. And okay, I don't want to just gloss over this. For all of you that participated tonight, I really do look forward to having a meaningful discussion on the rest of the entire plan. So please bear with us on that part. We're not trying to pull the wool over your eyes on this, believe it or not. This is an important plan for us, and we want to make sure that we have the building blocks for that plan as we move forward. So thank you all for your input on this matter.
And now that I have all your email addresses and your interest, you'll be added to our downtown plan distribution list and planning commission list. So you can definitely participate in those discussions and give the views whenever we can give those again.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Meg. Okay, interlocal agreement. Looks like Carl.
Yes, so this is through discussions with Skamania County Noxious Weed Control Board. They actually recognized, they came to me and I believe Ben, we had a side meeting about the street trees with them. Noxious weeds were brought up and I said, as a matter of fact, we have Scotch broom over running some of our properties. Can you help? They said yes. Not only do we have Scotch broom, we have knotweed, we have garlic mustard. So this would be an interlocal agreement for Skamania County Noxious Weed Board to come in and mitigate those noxious weeds.
Is there a
So-
cost? I didn't look at the agreement. Is there a cost for us?
Yes, it is on there as far as what they are taking care of this year. It should be in your documents.
Yeah, I just
Yep.
hadn't got to it yet. All right, administrative fee, 12%. Whoa. Ken, did you draft this one?
Doesn't look like one of mine. I think it came from the county, but I mean, I'm fine with it. It's,
Yeah.
it's.
I mean, it's,
pretty-
but they
what-
captioned it as an MOU.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. What do we have? MOU and ILA. The acronyms don't match up.
It doesn't really matter. It's an agreement
Okay.
between two agencies. It's an ILA. And yes, I agree, Robert, that's a little bit inconsistent, but it's enforceable as an ILA.
Yeah,
It
that's
has
fine.
all the ILA language in it.
So it's whatever their fees and costs are plus 12%.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Carl, is that reasonable? 12%?
Yeah, from what I found, yes.
Okay. Then you've satisfied what I needed to know. Go back up.
Satisfied enough to enter a
But
motion?
That's
there,
what
Robert?
I gotta get back to it, man. I can only work these screens as fast.
I'm going to make a motion,
There you
Robert.
go.
You're off the
See?
hook.
Yay.
Motion to approve the interlocal agreement with Skamania County for vegetation and noxious weed control.
Which happens to be called the memorandum of understanding.
Boom.
Second.
All right, the first and a second, was there any other discussion? Okay, roll call, yay or nay? Paul,
Aye.
Robert,
Yay.
Amy,
Aye.
Matthew,
Aye.
thank you very much. Liana,
So with Ken being in Vancouver and everyone else being a little bit closer, this is a resolution authorizing electronic signatures for Ken to sign documents as to form electronically.
Sure. Motion to approve resolution 2020-361 authorizing electronic signature approvals as to form by the city attorney.
Second.
any other discussion? We have first and a second, is there discussion?
Just a quick question. I believe it was discussed last meeting about the need for finding the vouchers and whatnot. Would we be able to use this for that, or is this strictly for Ken's interactions?
This one's pretty limited, Matthew. It's just so I can approve documents to form. Normally, I would do that at the council meetings, right, Leon? I usually sit next to you and you hand them to me. But obviously, I can't do that with the no in-person meetings. So this is
Sure.
facilitating that. I've also had this in place with Washougal for a few years, and it does sort of expedite getting things done.
But to Matthew's
the mech-
point, do we need one for approving the vouchers to getting signatures on that, Leona or Ken?
But yeah, it would have to be a separate resolution.
I'm not as concerned about the vouchers. We still have them here if anyone wants to stop by and arrange for an appointment, or we can have them set out if anyone wants to stop by. But I'm also okay waiting until council can gather.
Okay.
So it's not as timely as an agreement that has to get out the door.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
And as a point of curiosity, what's the mechanism for that electronic signature? Is that just like a
DocuSign.
something like that?
No, actually, I have a pen that I can write on my screen, and I can either do it in PDF or in Word. And so it looks no different. Normally, Liana would send it to me for my first signature. So any physical signatures would still be attached to that document. So that's the way we've always done it in Washougal.
Okay. Because I forgot where we're at. So do we do a first on that yet?
I have a first and a second on the
We're ready
table.
for the roll call.
Very good. Paul,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Matthew.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you all very much. Liana.
So in talking with the Downtown Association, they're working on applying for their RCO grant. I believe it's due by the end of this month. And one of the requirements for that RCO grant is, or one of the requests last time was to have an agreement between the city and the county on the maintenance of the plaza once it's constructed. This first round application is to meet the technical portion of the application. So I don't believe we have to have an agreement in place now. However, when they do their final application in a couple of months, they will need this to make their application stronger. And so that is why it's on now, is to continue to get that discussion rolling with the final agreement coming before council at a later date. And so the last time the council had a joint meeting with the county, they discussed the essence of this agreement. One thing that was discussed at length was the costs related to removal of the plaza if it were to after the end of the agreement. And so let me get to that point on page. Oh, yeah. Because of the condition and instances that both the city and the county have come across, there is a requirement to maintain adequate reserves for the plaza. So the city has to maintain those reserves, and it'll be the reserves will be calculated based on the useful life of each asset in the park plaza. Rather than setting a specific dollar amount, it'll actually be based on what the final plaza is, and it'll be set aside on an annual basis, again, and calculated to ensure that adequate funds are available should anything need to be renovated or repaired. And that's on page 330. Let's see if we want to do any alterations. So I believe it's on page 331. We have to do it of a quality at least as good or as better of existing conditions of those already used in the plaza. And we have to get it approved by Skamania County. And then on 7.6, again on page 331, so at the end of 30 years, it'll automatically renew unless the county gives the city 2 years notice of their intent not to renew. And I believe at that time, if the county wants to take it over, then any funds the city has in reserves become the property of the city, unless the county agrees to continue the use of the park plaza and all the maintenance. And then the costs, anything in the reserves would be moved then to the county for maintenance of the plaza. And if they want to discontinue use as a park plaza, then the city has the right, I believe it was a right of first refusal if they wanted to sell it. Let me confirm that. Let's see.
Yeah, 7.6, 331, page 331.
Yeah, so if the county chooses to sell it,
Mhm.
then the county has to reimburse the city also for any city general fund contributions in the actual construction of the plaza. So if the city doesn't end up purchasing it, if the county sells it, then the city, in essence, we get our money back for the initial capital cost.
Do you have any idea how big of a reserve fund we're talking about here?
No.
So this is a informational item. Well, I can't say informational. This is first go.
Mhm.
This is not a motion at this time. So if you guys have some questions now, then by all means. But if you'd like, the idea is for you to chew on it for a bit and bring any additional questions you might have so that we can start refining this document so that we can be ready when the time comes.
And this is taken from the county's input and then what Adam took from our joint meeting as well.
So I did have a little bit to add to this, if you're fine with that now.
Go for it.
All right. So I'm going to submit to the record some email correspondence that I had with Liana since, it began November 19th, really trying to get some information on just on this initial draft because it was not matching what I recollected from the conversation we had with the county. And so it disappoints me that it's originally was supposed to be delivered in November, and it's gotten to this point without reflecting the initial intent, but I suppose that's just Adam Kick staying true to form. Between Downtown Association and the city, through the grants and tax funds, we're going to be, the two agencies are committing large sums of money to this development while the county refuses to provide anything to the effort, but a piece of land that they have failed to develop or sell for decades. Yet once developed, the county will have the option to take it back if desired, or remove it altogether if the preference is there. Let alone the fact the county makes it clear that this is a reflection on the county and the courthouse, yet shirks all day-to-day maintenance, insurance, coverage, and so forth. And so, to me, if we wanted to reverse course and not spend any tax dollars towards development, then that's something more aligned to being fair. If the city and Downtown Association feel okay with the county being able to pull the plug at the end of the lease term. Otherwise, I request this agreement reflect where conversations concluded with the land being granted to the city in perpetuity, conditioned on continued use and maintenance in the prescribed manner. That was where the conversation had left off.
And I discussed that with Adam Kick, and this is the result of our discussion. As far as what the county commissioners, based on his conversations and what they relayed to him. So again, if we want, we can hold another joint meeting to
Sure.
have those discussions. But this is as far as I was able to get based on those comments and in talking with Adam Kick.
I appreciate that. Just I never did hear back from you for months now. So
The
good to know.
draft contract was the result. So.
Any other thoughts? Okay, please take the time to evaluate, formulate, get your thoughts, or we'd like to hear your thoughts. This is kind of a big deal. So yeah, let's take a critical look at it and be ready to have another discussion next month.
Do we want another discussion? Because I don't see any changes with this. Or do we want to have a joint meeting?
Well, if we're not going to get any changes talking about it, then I guess that's the only way we're going to move forward on that.
Okay.
Okay, Ben.
Well, I would ask, do we want to take a straw poll? Just, I mean, if everybody else is in favor of the current language, then there wouldn't be a need for additional joint meetings, right?
This is Robert. I don't have a problem with the current language. Yeah, just if you're taking the straw poll. I'm offering my straw.
Amy?
I would say that I haven't delved into the details enough, and I would love a little bit more time to do so. I think that we need to be very wary of the fact that the political will changes. And I think that I would agree with Matthew that this is a substantial investment on our part, and I think we should safeguard it as much as possible. Which isn't to say that I don't agree with the terms that have been hammered out here, but it's just worth my delving into a little more, is what I would say. And it may very well be worth us sitting down again, perhaps as a wider group with the commissioners and the SDA, and figuring out whether there are, terms that are more palatable. And I'm not saying that these aren't palatable. I'm just saying, is there a real reason to rush into this?
The RCO contract, the RCO grant is the driving force.
And what's the timeline on that, Liana?
They're submitting their application by the end of this month, and I can confirm with Kelly what the timeline is for the final application, but it is just a couple month turnaround time.
So is this good enough? Is this a good enough draft to enable them to submit for the grant and then give us time to hammer out details?
I can talk with her about that.
Okay.
Well, because it wasn't.
Oops, I'm sorry, Scott. Sorry.
Well, I'd say it wasn't. It didn't hold back the application last year.
I believe they thought that it would give them a higher score.
A little more juice. All right.
Yeah.
Robert?
Yeah, Leon, my only comment was if you could can you get this in a Word doc and send it
Yeah.
out? And then Amy, what I can do is just post comments, changes, red lines to the document and see if anybody wants to add to. We can sort of do it one off, we don't have to have a meeting, and I don't send it to 2 or more city council members so I don't piss Ken off. I'll just send it to one. And then that person can send it on to the next person.
Great. I love it.
Okay.
Paul?
I'd like to chime in. Matthew makes some great points. It is an imperfect agreement, but overall, I agree with the spirit of it, and I think we should strike while the fire's hot on this.
As a matter of process, I would prefer if you guys do your redlining and then send them back to staff rather than circulating them, because that would possibly turn into a serial meeting.
Gotcha. You don't want us to send them to you, Ken, so we keep some attorney-client privilege between the red lines?
I don't want to have the city incur those charges for nothing. Send it to Liana.
And Robert, some of it you're going to comment on, right?
Yeah, right. I'll just put a comment out, and then
it would be nice if.
Can we tighten this up, or is this something we want to do? Do we want to do it? It doesn't. Yeah. No, I'm not looking at just grammar. I'm looking at, where's the substance that we need to maybe focus in a little more. Because I agree with Matthew. I don't disagree with him. I just, us fighting with the county is not necessarily the biggest priority, but if this project's going to get some legs, it seems like it needs to move forward. We've all talked about it being a, kind of a focal point for the city.
Yeah.
And then we're going to build 15 single family houses right there on that property.
So one thing that I can do is I'll send everyone a Word document and you can make comments and red lines. And then at the next meeting, we can discuss those. So then it doesn't become any sort of open public meetings.
Me too,
Okay.
Leon. There are some issues that I think I might want to weigh in on.
Okay.
The only problem with that, Liana, is I'd like to see Robert's red line.
Well, I could, Leon, if you can send it to me, I'll try to bang it out over the weekend and then just put it back to you, Leon, and then you can send that one out to the rest of the folks.
Just don't have this turn into a round robin. You can, if Robert could share his comments with everybody, but then what you don't want to have happen is then everybody sharing their own comments with everybody else, because then you're turning into a meeting. But there's no problem. Robert can do a unilateral share with everybody. Better to do it through staff.
Yeah.
But with Robert's expertise, is probably having his comments would be valuable to everybody. And then you can all kind of process it and maybe send any comments back to Liana that you might add. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Ben.
Okay, 2 months ago, we thought it was a good time to update the planning fees. We didn't know that the world was going to stop for the time being. So this is asking you to repeal that update and adopt a new update that wouldn't take effect until September 1st. The one that you had updated was due to take effect on June 1st. And so the effect would be to make that as if it never happened and delay it until the 1st of September.
Amy, I'm going to disagree with you. I know you're going to want to agree with that, but to me, if you're developing a piece of property or, you're building your house, your costs aren't associated with COVID or where we are currently. I don't think the city should take a hit between now and then on, fees associated with construction projects. That's my 2 cents. I understand where you're going to come from, Amy, but I just don't see those fees being, we're helping somebody out. They've already got those costs sunk into their plans, their construction costs, how they want to do their project. That's just my 2 cents.
I'm cool with that. I mean, new business is not the same as existing business.
There you go. That's better put than the way I put it. Yeah.
And can you remind me, these fees that change, is it purely on construction or is on other projects, homeowner projects, if you want to build a new garage or whatnot?
It is only on the planning specific fees. So things like subdivisions, boundary line adjustments, environmental regulations. It is not, and it wasn't a change to the building code fees. Those are baked in with the International Building Code, which should be available to you guys to update in a few months. So none of those right now.
Well, with that in mind, I think Robert makes a good point. These are big money construction companies for the most part, and those fees are sunk in already.
Yeah. To my thought, Ben, thank you for putting it together and spending time on it. My recommendation is to not take a vote on this proposal.
If any of you have a differing opinion and would like to float a motion, do so at this time, or we will let it die due to lack of a first. This issue is dead. So due to lack of a first, the delayed implementation of the planning fees will not, they will go ahead as planned. Okay, Liana.
So we've been working on discharge contracts with the significant industrial users for quite some time. I believe it was in February or March when the ordinance changed to allow us to enter into contract with our industrial users. And Backwoods is ready to move forward with the contract, and that's what you have before you. We've sent a similar contract to LDB, and I've followed up with them as well, and they are still in the process of reviewing it.
Where'd you get the document, Leanna? Is that something we created or something that came from somebody?
It came from somebody.
Okay. I mean, did Backwoods propose
No,
it? Or?
Backwoods didn't propose it. I believe it came either from Ecology or from the City of Deer Park example or something along those lines. And
Deer Park,
Ecology,
Utah? Yeah.
and Ecology approved it.
Oh, Ecology has seen it.
Ecology has seen it and approved it.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thanks.
Mhm.
Yeah, a lot of terms in there I'm not used to seeing. So, if Backwoods has approved it or given you their authorization,
Yeah, they've had it, I believe, since October, November of last year, something like that.
Okay.
So,
Motion to approve the industrial discharge contract with Backwoods Brewing.
Thank you, Matthew. Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? Roll call for the vote. Paul?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And Matthew?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Liana?
Business licensing services agreement. Again, in 2017, the state passed a law saying that all cities have to go through a licensing agency for their business licenses. You can either use a local program or you have to use a state program. So we're using the state program, and this is the contract with the state.
And this is for people who want a business license with the city of Stevenson, so they regulate that. Is this my understanding, or am I wrong?
Yes, it's supposed to streamline the application process for businesses, so they only have to apply for a license once through the state, and then they can select the cities that
So
they want.
okay, my understanding is the city of Stevenson didn't used to issue separate business license. Have we done that in the past? I didn't think we did.
It's $10. Yeah, we've
It
been
is a
doing
$10
it
fee?
for I
Okay.
don't know how long, but
A
yeah.
long time.
It has? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
They look really nice too. There's usually a picture of Stevenson, that different graphics every year. They're nice.
But what's the downside if the business, let's assume they're operating even out of their house and they don't pay the $10? I mean, they're still paying their B&O taxes to the state, right?
It helps us identify what businesses are operating in this. I believe it also helped with the membership to the Stevenson Business Association. So
Okay.
you kind of have a separate.
And I want to bring it up. I'm fighting the city of Lake Oswego on this right now.
Oh.
They want $80 for their business license for home businesses. And it's based on the square footage used of your house, which I thought was hysterical. But maybe it's a tracking thing that the state wants or something. Okay.
Well, A&J pays $10. I paid $10.
There you go.
Justin pays $10.
All right.
Yeah, Ken pays $10. Yeah.
I pay $10. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I will update my checklist for the cities, the businesses in the city of Stevenson.
I'll make
So
a
is that-
motion to approve the agreement with the State of Washington Department of Revenue for business licensing services.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, roll call for the vote. Paul?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Matthew?
Aye.
Thank you. Liana, you're having a busy night.
Yep.
CARES Act contract.
So I got a copy of the template for the contract, but I don't have the actual contract yet. And so to expedite the signing of the contract for the CARES Act, this would just authorize the mayor to sign the contract with the Washington State Department of Commerce for CARES Act funding for $48,600.
So is that state funding?
It's it's federal funding through the state.
Okay. So that's how they're dispersing it to the jurisdictions. Okay.
A motion to authorize the mayor to sign the contract with Washington State Department of Commerce for CARES Act funding in the amount of $48,600.
Second.
All right, there's a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, roll call for the vote. Paul.
Aye.
Robert.
Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
Matthew.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, Ben, housing capacity grant.
Yeah, so we talked about this one briefly at the end of the last meeting. The state opened up a pot of funding for the non-GMA communities that was available for GMA communities last year. So GMA is the Growth Management Act, and those are for the large and fast-growing areas of the state. As a area that's neither large or fast-growing, we're non-GMA, and so we weren't eligible for some grant funding related to housing. They opened up a small funding program this year. We applied for it and we got it. And so this would be for $25,000 to support zoning code amendments for the residential areas, to implement some aspects of the downtown plan, including looking at the parking reduction for residential uses downtown, and then to look at allowing extension of utilities, water, sewer utilities outside of city limits, which is currently not allowed. So the 25,000, 10,000 of that would be able to go to the general fund to plug some of the hole that Leona talked about earlier. 15,000 remainder would be some combination of water fund, sewer fund, and general fund for that. So it definitely helps, and it helps us do some things that we had planned to do or had been recommended to do through the downtown plan and through the housing needs analysis and buildable lands inventory that was conducted by the EDC. So it's great timing for that, and I'm looking forward to getting going on some of these things.
So unless there's some questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the agreement.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with the Department of Commerce for the increasing residential building capacity grants.
And I'll second.
There's a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, roll call for the vote. Paul?
Aye.
We lost you there. Can you vote again?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And Matthew?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, Ben, supplemental contract?
Yeah, this is our contract with Wallace Engineering to conduct engineering reviews of projects. We anticipated that we wouldn't go over 15,000 for that, but with the Tolliver subdivision and the Rock Cove Hospitality Center, we will go over that. All of these are pass-through funds, so Wallace gives us an estimate. We get an agreement from the applicant to pay for all that, and then we pass their billings on to the applicant as they come. So this isn't a revenue hit to the city, but we do need authority for them to go over the 15,000 that we initially thought would cover everything.
I'll make a motion to approve the supplemental contract with Wallace Engineering for development review services in the amount of $8,500 for a new contract total of $23,500.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call for the vote.
Question there.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Matthew.
No worries. So Ben, with the, you said, so that the cost gets passed on to the individual. So when they pay that back, is the idea that it doesn't take us below that 15 again, or is it kind of once the dollar's spent, it's spent?
Not sure I fully understand the question. So
I guess if they're paying back already, then shouldn't that take care? I mean, keep us below the 15?
This is for us to give the check to Wallace in the end. So the contract amount right now has a not to exceed 15,000. We will exceed that with these reviews. So this is allowing that contract not to exceed to increase. And so this contract is separate from the budgeting aspect, which is all just neutral.
Right.
For you guys.
Okay, that makes more sense then. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Good.
Okay, roll call for the vote. Paul? You might have to clear your throat or something so your microphone can catch up. All we hear is this. Aye. So
Aye.
there we go. Robert,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
and Matthew.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, informational items. Is there anything of note? Did you guys want to drill down on any of the informational items?
All good.
Okay, and then let's see, is this what we were talking about earlier, Amy, 7G?
Yeah, it is.
You want to, well, go ahead. I'm excited for you to share.
Thank you. So 7G is a letter that I sent to Renee Tkach from the Friends of the Gorge. And I kind of had this aha moment during the pandemic when I saw all these cities like Oakland, Seattle, Portland closing streets to cars so that pedestrians and cyclists could more freely move about the city. And it occurred to me, this is a time to perhaps strike while the iron is hot to make some changes to the historic highway. And I think that making these changes to the historic highway will have a positive impact on our city. And it has to do with taking part of that highway that goes between Dodson and Bridal Veil and turning it into one way for cars. So automobiles would be able to travel from the west to the east, and then they'd have to take the freeway back, but it would free that other lane up for pedestrians and cyclists. So when I contacted Renee, I got connected to, at the same time, I also contacted ODOT and I contacted the Oregon State Parks. And they were, lo and behold, already having these conversations. So that was really exciting. But they were having these conversations without any input from the Washington side. And I think it's really important for us to let them know that this affects us. And what I'd like to do is gather some more information and come back to you guys. Ultimately, what I would be coming back to you guys for, I think, is a letter of support for this kind of a project. So that's my sort of 30-second overview of it, but there is some steam already happening over there. So it's not the start of a conversation, it's us just joining an existing conversation. So I welcome any comments. I was initially reaching out just as an individual, and then I wanted to reach out as a councilwoman because I do think that it's really important to us and to any trails to town sort of projects that are in the works, as well as a pedestrian and bikeway path on the Bridge of the Gods. So you guys can hit me up anytime. I'm going to continue to have these conversations. And again, it's sort of an informational gathering mode. If you guys already know that, like, yes, this is something we support, please let me know. I'd love to be able to say, hey, City of Stevenson is in support of this kind of an idea. But I'm fine with it just being informational gathering at this point as well.
It's probably no surprise, Amy, but that sounds like something that's right up my alley.
Yeah.
Unless there's something weird that you're not disclosing, I fully support it.
Cool, thanks, Paul.
Well, I'm no friend of the Friends of the Gorge, so I will support you in whatever you want to do.
Thanks.
Any thoughts, Matthew?
I mean, I love the idea of it. I'm a little torn from the Washington side giving input on what Oregon's doing, but I do love the idea.
It's like an amicus brief, you know?
So
Right.
just waiting for Judge Sullivan to allow it.
Cool. So I'll just say straw poll, we're in favor and we need more details, but this is important to us over here on this side of the river. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Carl, staff report.
All right, I'll do a couple of the heavy hitters. The first one being Russell Street project. Hopefully you guys have been seeing my updates every week. I apologize for the one I did not get out the week prior, but honestly, there was not much to, other than the water line, there wasn't much to add. I believe overall it's going good. There is a little bit of frustration with the power poles that are still there. That has to do with two communication companies that haven't got their lines off the poles yet. And in their defense, they are having some COVID challenges with crew. So a little bit of compassion going out there, but it is hindering the concrete on the east side of Russell mid-block. But we'll work through that. Barring that, it's going good. I think you saw that. I think this is a bit liberal, and this came from the contractor. They're about a month ahead. I said 10 days, I think, earlier in a department head meeting. I think I'll split the difference with them. I'll give them 15 working days ahead. That's kind of how I see it. But, we'll take that. But again, overall, it's going good. I really like the way the contractor works with the public. It is, if you guys, I know Liana is seeing it, getting the mail in front of the post office is challenging. It's a bit of a maze with the construction going on. Again, the public has been great going in and out of that. We did pour concrete in front of the entrance on Friday. And it was a coordinated effort between everybody to get the customers in and out of the post office. We tried to do it while it was closed, which we did, but it didn't seem to matter that it was closed. People are still getting their mail, right? So no, it's going good. Does anybody have any questions on the project from what you're seeing?
They're doing a great job, Carl. Very
Yeah,
impressive.
I really do. I really do mean that. They're a conscientious crew, very small crew, and it's going good. They're doing a good job.
Yeah.
So meter installations, as Liana mentioned, started Monday. And I'm not a betting man, and I know why I would have lost. These guys are smoking through replacing all the meters. They've got roughly about 550 out of 700 done in 4 days.
Well, they can get them done real fast because they don't turn the water back on at my house. They did all my.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
You knew it was coming. I even had to call Gordy. I was like, come on, really? I'm the one guy on the street.
So the guy runs out of water and he texts Gordy. So one hiccup, apparently the guy that turned the water on guy didn't get the memo on a couple of services. So Robert, you were not the only one. So we did.
Oh, you mean there are other lawyers in town that got treated that way?
And if you put that list together, Ken, you'll see why their water did not get turned back on.
I didn't have any problems. I had a great experience.
Oh,
thanks. So we did receive, yeah, I mean, they're on in all honesty, there was some that did not get turned back on. The customers were not complaining. They just simply informed us, hey, I watched the guys switch out the meter and they left and I don't have any water. So they were good hearted about it. But yeah, another success story there. We have some challenging meter locations in the town. And so how it's going down is city staff goes out, puts a flag ahead of the crew. The crew has a vac truck, goes in, vectors out to where the meter's going. Another crew comes in, switches out the meter. And it really is, it's going pretty slick. I would have lost that bet because yeah, we've got some meters that don't like coming out of the ground, but we've already seen some meters that have shown leakage. There was one ridiculous leak that was on a service that was not even being used.
Oh, jeez.
Get ready for this one. Overnight, 15,000 gallons of water.
Ouch.
Overnight.
Ouch.
So, yeah. So yeah, get ready. I believe we're gonna see a lot of water savings. So we have no idea how long that was leaking. It could not have been that long. Just coincidentally, there was a culvert nearby where the water was going, unbeknownst. So anyways, that's how the meter swap outs are going.
So that leak was on our side, obviously, not the other side of the meter.
It was on the other side of the meter, and the meter was not working. That was unaccounted for. That was a water loss.
All right.
No, it wasn't being used. It was a leak. It was at a residence that it was vacant. So yeah, that was just one of the findings.
So one of the things that I've also been talking to staff about and tried to get out in the messaging was that there are going to be a lot more customers that had meters that were either slow or did not work, and will be calling about their high usage on their next water bill. If you also hear that in the public, no, we did not raise the rates. We just changed the meters to be more efficient to read the water accurately. So.
Yeah, we saw that, Liana. We saw that on the first 30 that we did as a trial, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, we got inquiries right away of why is my water bill so high?
Yeah.
So we are going to see that. And again, yeah, like Liana says, if you hear that, that's the reason. The meters are actually accurate. And that's it for my staff update.
Thank you.
Unless anybody has any more questions.
Ben?
Yeah, Carl, I saw my neighbor's 2-year-old run around with a pink flag, so don't know if that was before or after the meter got replaced.
It was before. It was prior. We got a call on that one.
All right, right on. Staff report for me. Thank you for approving the contract for housing tonight. That's something that we'll work a lot on the second half of this year, and it allows us to really get into some of the downtown things to make the good changes that people are expecting us to make. So that's really great. Have spent a lot of time over the last month doing the development review part for the subdivision and the shoreline permit that you guys will review in more detail the next time. If we can have it the next time. Also, the Gorge Commission is in the process of finalizing their amendment to the management plan. And most of that doesn't affect us except for the revision to urban area boundaries. We got off some comments to their proposal today. Most of it is things that we can live with. There's something like 14 or 15 policies that they propose in that applying. The Oregon communities, cities and counties are giving comments on several of those. I'm still reviewing their comments to see if we need to join anything that they're saying. But the comments we submitted were on discussion we had in 2015 when they were establishing what the legal description of the boundary was for things like the BPA right-of-way or road right-of-ways. They settled on using the center line of the right-of-way in the legal description. What we're asking them to provide is just a minor adjustment policy that would allow us to move the boundary to the far edge of the right-of-way so that we don't need a scenic area permit if we run a sewer line within that road that needs to go a portion of it on the urban area side without a scenic area permit, a portion on the scenic area side with different reviews there. So asking for them to carve out that as a easy get minor amendment. Also, there's some of the draft, the way it's written really tries to build in the GMA as something that would apply to Stevenson, even though it doesn't. And so we're asking them to really recognize that we're not a GMA community and we're not subject to the state requirements that they were reviewing when they drafted those policies. So greater recognition of what's actually on the ground here. There's also the third one we commented on. They want to adopt an Oregon administrative rule that would apply to the Washington side. And this is the worst policy, in my opinion, there, because OARs are promulgated by the Oregon's executive branch. It's not even the Oregon legislature that does those things. So they want to take something that's executive branch in Oregon and apply it to Washington communities. And so having them take a look at that differently, and if they want to, instead of adopting it by reference, include all that text within the plan, hey, sure, that's fine. But don't subject us on the Washington side to something that the Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development might change someday in the future. So that public comment period should open sometime in the next month. And so hopefully next week when the commission reviews that, they'll include some of the comments that we submitted for that. So that's the big highlight. My staff report.
And Liana, did you have something in the packet or did you have something to present?
Both. I have both. But first, Matthew, I want to apologize if you were looking for a direct comment or response to the contract related to the Park Plaza. Sorry, I didn't get back to you. I just assumed it was going to be discussed at the council meeting, and therefore I was going to leave it open to council and discussion at the broader level. So I apologize.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So first off, Mary Repar contacted me and said that the Lions need someone with a truck to help put up flags. And so if you want, and this is for Memorial Day weekend, the people that put them up are not going to do it this year. And so if you can contact me for information, I can give you her phone number and we can help her out.
Liana?
Yes, Mary?
John Mobley and I will be putting them up tomorrow at 8, and we can always use one other hand. We will be wearing masks and gloves, but 8 a.m. we'll meet down at the Lions Club.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then a couple of things that I've added, and one thing I didn't include in my report was Carl and I went through the insurance audit. Every year as part of our insurance, they do an audit of a sector. We did a public works review, so the results of that audit are in there. There are some things that we'll work on refining. One of them is our contracts for small works. For public works, I think they just recently changed some of their language for their contracts, and so we'll work to incorporate that into our template. And other than that, I think we did a pretty good job, but also got some good insight on ways we can improve. Also in there is information on the Mid-Columbia Economic Development District's resiliency project. They're going to give us reports every 2 weeks. That was the first report that they had. And again, this is something that they were working on prior to COVID, but more related to Eagle Creek Fire and economic resiliency for businesses. Because of COVID, they're definitely ramping it up and moving it forward a lot. The auditor, again, they started on the 18th. And so in the packet, I have the contract that we signed. So that's our agreement. And then I emailed out separately the entrance conference. And so it goes over the scope of the audit. I didn't have it in time to put the packet together, but generally they're reviewing the general ledger, utility billing, and payroll software conversion, payroll, procurement of professional services, accounts receivable for utility billings, cash receipting, timeliness and completeness of deposits, voids, and adjustments at City Hall, the financial condition, accounts payable, and self-insurance for unemployment. So those are the areas, and they talked with myself, Scott, and Matthew prior to the audit to help, I think, identify what they're looking at. And then it in the letter it just goes over the different levels of reporting based on what they find during the audit and their analysis, and how they protect confidential information and how they expect us to work back and forth. And let's see, they also communicate on emerging issues. And so this year they're working on a tracker as far as where your audit issues stand. And so that's part of the flyer that went along with that entrance conference packet. And talking also about other assets and resources that they have. We have used, I believe, the Center for Government Innovation. We use the lean process to help with the conversion between the city doing the building permit process and then converting it to how we're working with the county on that. And so that was very good and helpful to streamline our process to get on the same page before we actually implemented that. And it's at no cost to the city, which is a great thing as well. And if you have any questions, let me know. If you want to have an entrance conference, or if anyone wants to have an entrance conference, a formal one with the state auditor, we can arrange that, and then they can. It would probably be via Zoom. It doesn't have to be a full quorum of council, but that was in essence the gist of the entrance conference. And that is all I have. There will be an exit conference as well, which I will send out a meeting invite. And again, if more than a quorum want to attend, it'll be a open public meeting. But that won't be, I believe they're hoping to wrap up sometime in June.
Great, thank you. Okay, unless there's some questions for any of staff, I would entertain a motion to approve the vouchers.
Motion to approve the vouchers is presented.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call for vote. Paul?
Aye.
Robert?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Matthew?
Me.
Okay. Any reason for the no?
Yeah, honestly, I'm just based on some of our previous conversations about the May BLA and just how it was handled, the oversight, and then the final cost rubs me the wrong way.
So I completely broke up on the first part of that.
Sorry, is this okay now?
Yeah.
Perfect. So just based off of previous conversations we've had about the May BLA, just the way it was handled and the oversight, and then ultimately the cost still rubs me the wrong way. So with the additional line item in here for that.
Okay. All right, anybody have anything to report?
Yeah, I do.
Go for it.
Just real quickly, because I know I'm getting tired. Probably you guys all are too. I'm like so sleepy.
That's my bedtime, people.
The EDC, if anybody, I don't know if everybody was on the email or not, but there was a Department of Commerce grant that came through from the state. And the EDC worked really diligently. We had 36 applications for that pool of money. 19 companies were awarded, total of almost $155,000. And people are pretty stoked on it. The numbers that I found kind of surprising, I don't know how they calculated them, but the numbers from the Department of Commerce said that grant will prevent the loss of 65 jobs and will employ a total of 81 individuals in our county.
Wow.
So I think that's good news and to be celebrated.
Very nice.
Anyone else?
If it hadn't happened in my house in 2 weeks, I don't know about it. So
Right. So we had a virtual Downtown Association board meeting on Tuesday, and kind of in line with other Washington State downtown, or part of the Main Street program. Everyone's kind of doubling down because it's divided into 4 committees, one of them being economic revitalization. So across the country, or at least across our state, a lot of boards are pooling their resources to do as much as possible on the economic revitalization aspect of it, to try to find some ways to jumpstart their economies, their respective economies. As I mentioned earlier, I saw an article yesterday or the day before that said it's not as simple as a marketing plug. Hey, don't forget about Stevenson. It is all about making sure that the customers feel safe as well. And even though it's only been 2 months, 2.5 months, getting past that fear is something that's going to have to be addressed as well. So that's something that there's a webinar next week that the Washington Main Street is putting on, that I'm going to check out and see what we can do to be part of economic recovery. And obviously, the focus with the Downtown Association is the downtown, but this is something a lesson that we can learn for the rest of the city as well. So can't wait to see what that message is. All right, anybody have anything else as far as reports go? All right, anything that you would like to see on the agenda for next meeting?
I'd like to see, and this might be part of the Stevenson Downtown Plan. I apologize, I have not waded through that plan yet. But I'm interested in taking up the conversation around affordable housing and the land trust opportunities. And I just want to make sure that we don't forget about that. So, I mean, I leave it up to Ben, I guess, as to whether that should be on next month's agenda or whether that gets wrapped into the larger discussion about the downtown plan. But I don't want to lose that thread.
Sure. Less about the downtown plan, but I'll definitely put some action item together to, include you maybe in conversations with the Housing Authority as the first most likely agency for that.
Awesome. Thanks. And I know Matthew's on that committee too.
Sad part is that pre-COVID, Walking Man and Moss had worked at a big event to raise money for affordable housing, and so now we'll have to reevaluate and see what we can do with that. But yeah, definitely on my radar as well.
Okay, does anybody need another link for the downtown plan? I made a big deal about the larger plan and discussion, and keep an eye on down the road earlier tonight. So if you need another link, or for Ben to send out a link to the master document, raise your hands, hit them up later. But okay, most. So Ben, why don't you just send it to everyone?
Send it
to everyone on council so that you guys can have
a great
chance.
document, but needs wine. Get through it.
I really want you guys to start. And there's been there's been a committee that's been working on different aspects of that plan that has been was kind of derailed with this madness. That's another thing we're gonna have to get going again. But this is the time to kind of get versed on the vision and some of the ideas that are in that document. So if you do have some questions, there's a full month to be prepared. And I would also anticipate that there's going to be some opportunity to defend your vote tonight out in public. So really important that you guys find a moment to go through that document and reach out if you have some questions or concerns.
I want to make one comment on the agenda items for next meeting. It is all dependent on what happens with the governor's proclamation order. So if it's not necessary, or what's the other word? Regular routine. Thank you. Yeah.
Understood.
So Real quick, I'm looking at this packet that was 450 pages.
Yeah.
With color, 450 plus. Let's start thinking about some ways that this wouldn't have been a packet in front of us at a table. Now, obviously, we don't have, I'm not going to have 3 monitors in front of me the next time we meet in City Hall, but 450 page packet feels like a lot of paper and a lot of staff time putting it all together. So there's got to be a way to run an effective meeting without having printed materials in front of us. So I'm not sure what that answer is. I've seen through my line of work, different organizations try to do tablets and laptops offered by the organization. Half the time the commissioners, like one organization in particular, can't remember to bring them to work. So give that some thought. I'm welcome to, would love to hear your ideas on how we can avoid, printing out 6 different packets at 458 pages. So unless there's some other thing, I would like to adjourn the meeting at 9:16.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Everybody be careful.